Greetings, lore masters. Tonight, our chronicle covers the mystery of the Daughter of Coldharbour, the one vampire who managed to steal the collective hearts of the entire Skyrim player base, despite her penchant for raising chickens from the dead during boss fights. We're stepping into the shadows of the Dawnguard expansion, specifically focusing on the awakening of Serana, a figure whose history is as deep and dark as the crypt she was buried in. Picture, if you will, the biting winds of the Pale. You're trudging through knee-deep snow, the kind that seeps into your boots and numbs your toes, heading toward a cave mouth that breathes out a stale, metallic scent. Inside, the air is thick with the dust of ages and the distinct coppery tang of fresh blood. The darkness here isn't just an absence of light, it's a physical weight, pressing against your chest, hiding predators that have waited centuries for a warm meal. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a trip to Dimhollow Crypt without some serious fire resistance potions and a hefty warhammer, or at least a very frantic sprint button. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment letting me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is. I love imagining this community spanning the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The winds of the Pale howl aggressively outside, but as the heavy wooden doors of Dimhollow Crypt groan shut behind the Dragonborn, that natural fury is replaced by a suffocating silence. This isn't the quiet of a library, it is the silence of a tomb that has been disturbed. The Dragonborn has been sent here by Isran, the paranoid but arguably justified leader of the Dawnguard, following rumours that the vampires are searching for something specific within these ruins. And Isran, for all his gruff shouting and heavy armour, has a nose for trouble. He knows that if the vampires want something this badly, the rest of the world definitely doesn't want them to have it. The descent into Dimhollow is not merely a walk into a cave, it is a journey backward through time. The initial chambers are familiar enough to anyone who has spent time spelunking in Skyrim. Ancient Nord masonry, the occasional scurrying skeever, and the tragic remains of those who came before. Specifically, the Dragonborn encounters the body of vigilant Tolan. The poor man had charged ahead, full of righteous fury and Stendarr's light, only to meet a grisly end. His defeat serves as a grim warning. Whatever is further down is beyond the capability of your average vampire hunter. It sets a tone of immediate danger. The predators here are organised, powerful, and looking for something that has been hidden since before the Empire of Septim was even a concept on a map. As the Dragonborn pushes deeper, the architecture shifts. The claustrophobic tunnels open up into a massive subterranean cavern that defies the typical layout of a Nordic burial ground. This is the first hint that Dimhollow isn't just a grave, it's a vault. Water cascades down from unseen heights, creating a misty haze that obscures the far walls, and amidst the gloom, voices echo. These aren't the mindless groans of Draugr, but the sharp, imperious commands of vampires. Logistical, a master vampire of the Vulkihar clan, is interrogating another vigilant, his voice dripping with frustration and cruelty. The conflict that ensues is chaotic. Spells of frost and lightning shatter the darkness, illuminating the jagged rocks and the rushing water. The vampires here are accompanied by deathhounds, creatures of muscle and malice that seem to absorb the light around them. But once the steel stops clashing and the silence returns, the Dragonborn is left standing before the true centerpiece of the cavern, a circular platform dominated by a complex arcane structure. This is no simple lever and pulley mechanism. It is a ritual site centered around a stone monolith that hums with a low magical resonance. This brings us to the puzzle that stands between the world and Serana. In the center of the room lies a stone structure with a button atop a pedestal. Pressing it doesn't open a door. Instead, it causes a spike to drive through the Dragonborn's hand. Blood is the key. It's a classic trope, but effective. The ancient mechanisms of the vampires respond only to the essence of life. As the blood hits the stone, purple fire erupts, tracing lines across the floor, illuminating a series of braziers arranged in a circle. Here lies a core in-game fact that every player remembers, mostly because the physics engine sometimes makes it incredibly finicky. To solve the puzzle, you must push the sliding stone braziers until they touch the end of the magical purple energy trails. It sounds simple, but there is a tactile heaviness to the stones as they grind against the floor, a sound of rock on rock that echoes loudly in the quiet cavern. As each brazier locks into place, the magical fire extends, connecting the circuit. It's a slow, deliberate process, emphasizing that this seal was meant to hold for eternity. The purple light is distinct, alien compared to the warm orange of fire or the blue of magicka usually seen in Skyrim. It signals necromancy, soul magic, the touch of the ideal masters perhaps. Once the final brazier clunks into position, the floor shudders. The ancient gears, dormant for eras, groan into life. The central monolith, a heavy cylinder of stone that looks impenetrable, begins to descend. It lowers slowly, revealing a hollow interior. It's a moment of high tension. Isran warned of a weapon. The vampires spoke of an artifact. The player expects a sword, a staff, maybe a horrific beast. Instead, as the stone casing falls away, a woman stumbles out. This is our first look at Serana. She doesn't emerge with the grace of a high fantasy elf or the ferocity of a warrior. She stumbles, nearly falling, catching herself on the edge of the monolith. She's disoriented, gasping for air as if she hasn't breathed in centuries, which of course she hasn't. She's clad in the vampire royal armour, a set of gear that immediately distinguishes her from the generic leather-clad vampires the Dragonborn just slaughtered. It speaks of nobility, of a hierarchy that exists in the shadows. Her skin is pale, her eyes the glowing orange-yellow characteristic of her kind. But there is no immediate aggression in them, only confusion. Strapped to her back is the object of everyone's desire, an Elder Scroll. It's massive, golden, and radiates a power that makes the air shimmer slightly around her. The contrast is striking, a confused, somewhat fragile-looking young woman carrying an artifact capable of rewriting reality itself. Serana's first interactions are a masterclass in fish-out-of-water storytelling. She looks at the Dragonborn not with hunger, but with suspicion and a touch of fear. She asks, "Who are you?" Her voice is raspy, unused to speech. When the Dragonborn asks how long she's been in there, she genuinely doesn't know. She asks who is the High King, and eventually who is the Emperor. This brings us to a fascinating obscure lore tidbit that is often missed if you rush through the dialogue options. When asked about the Empire, Serana inquires if it is a Cyrodiilic empire. This specific phrasing is crucial. It implies she predates the Septim dynasty entirely, and likely the Roman dynasty as well. She comes from an era where the concept of a unified empire ruled from Cyrodiil was either non-existent or a volatile, shifting idea. This single line of dialogue anchors her origin deep in the chaotic history of Tamriel, far earlier than almost anything else we encounter in the game that is still living. This revelation naturally leads to one of the most enduring debates in the fan community. Exactly how long was Serana asleep? The game is deliberately vague, but fans have dissected her dialogue for years. Some argue she has been asleep for over 4,000 years, dating back to the First Era, potentially before the Alessian Empire. Others point to architectural clues in Castle Vulkihar and suggest a slightly more recent time frame, perhaps the interregnum of the Second Era. However, her shock at the existence of an empire in Cyrodiil strongly supports the thousands of years theory. It suggests she went into that crypt when the world was a fundamentally different place, before the great dynasties that define modern Tamrielic history had even written their first laws. Regardless of the timeline, the reality of the moment is undeniable. The Dragonborn stands in a damp, violet-lit cavern, face to face with a pure-blooded vampire who is clutching an Elder Scroll like a safety blanket. The pure dust of the crypt is settling. The bodies of the vampires and their death hounds are cooling on the stone floor, and the destiny of the world has just shifted. Serana shakes the cobwebs from her mind, her focus narrowing. She doesn't care about the politics of the current age or the civil war raging above ground. She has one goal, a singular drive that overrides the confusion of her awakening. She needs to go home. "My family lived on an island to the west of Solitude," she says, her voice gaining a bit of strength. "I would guess they still do." It's a calm statement, but it carries a heavy implication. Islands don't just disappear, and powerful vampire clans don't just fade away. She's asking the Dragonborn, a renowned vampire hunter, or at least someone working with them, to escort her directly into the heart of the enemy's stronghold. It's a ludicrous request on paper, yet there is something about her, perhaps the way she holds the scroll, or the sheer displacement she radiates that makes the Dragonborn pause. The atmosphere in Dimhollow shifts from hostile to conspiratorial. The immediate threat of the cavern's guardians is gone, replaced by the weight of the unknown. Who is this woman? Why was she locked away with such elaborate security? And most importantly, why does she seem less like a monster and more like a lost traveller? The purple brazier fires flicker, casting long, dancing shadows against the walls as Serana steps out of the ritual circle, her boots clicking softly on the stone. She's awake. The Elder Scroll is in play, and the Dragonborn has just become the guardian of the most dangerous being in Skyrim. Emerging from the stagnant, blood-scented air of Dimhollow Crypt into the biting cold of Skyrim's surface is a shock to the system. The wind howls across the snowy peaks of the Pale, a stark reminder that while the dead sleep in silence, the living must endure the elements. As the Dragonborn and Serana step out into the whiteout, the contrast is visually arresting. You have the rough-hewn, fur-covered silhouette of the Dovahkiin, and trailing just a step behind, the elegant, almost spectral figure of Serana. But what truly catches the eye, gleaming even through the swirling blizzard, is the massive golden cylinder strapped to her back. It is impossible to ignore the Elder Scroll. In the game, we often treat items as mere inventory icons, weightless sprites that vanish into our pockets alongside 50 cabbage heads and a spare warhammer. But let's take a moment to appreciate the sheer physicality of what Serana is hauling. An Elder Scroll is not a piece of parchment rolled up in a cardboard tube. It is a heavy, indestructible artifact of unknown metal, etched with celestial patterns that seem to shift if you stare at them too long. It radiates a faint, humming energy, a vibration that you can feel in your teeth if you stand too close. And Serana, who has just woken from a slumber lasting thousands of years, is carrying this cosmic burden as if it were a simple backpack. The narrative weight of this object is far heavier than its physical mass. To the uninitiated, it's a treasure. To the wise, it's a radioactive hazard. The Elder Scrolls, or Kelly in the Dragon tongue, are not just history books. They are fragments of creation itself. They exist outside the linear flow of time, recording not just what happened, but what could happen, and what will happen, all simultaneously. Carrying one is like carrying a piece of the raw code of the universe. It's no wonder Serana seems protective of it. Even if she doesn't fully grasp the specifics of the prophecy inside yet, she understands the magnitude of the object. It is her leverage, her shield, and perhaps her curse. This brings us to a core in-game fact that players encounter repeatedly. Nobody touches the scroll but Serana. Try to open her inventory to trade gear. You can give her a nice enchanted dagger or a helmet, but that scroll is locked tight. It is permanently equipped, a visual fixture of her character model for a huge chunk of the questline. In narrative terms, this signifies her distrust. She has just woken up in a world she doesn't recognise, surrounded by people she doesn't know. That scroll is the only constant she has left. It's the reason she was locked away, and it's the reason she's still alive. Giving it up would be tantamount to suicide. As the duo trudges through the deep snow descending the mountain path toward the coast, one has to wonder about the psychological toll of proximity to such an artifact. We know from the lore that merely looking at the glyphs of an Elder Scroll without proper mental preparation, specifically the rituals of the cult of the ancestor moth, can strike a person blind or shatter their mind instantly. Yet, here is Serana wearing it like a cape. Does the casing protect her, or does her vampiric nature, being undead, and thus somewhat removed from the natural cycle of life that the scrolls usually catalogue, offer some immunity? There is an obscure lore tidbit found in the book Effects of the Elder Scrolls, which suggests that the scrolls themselves have a will. They cannot be counted or measured accurately because they fluctuate in number and location. They essentially allow themselves to be found when a prophecy is ripening. This adds a terrifying layer to Serana's burden. She isn't just carrying a passive object. She is carrying a sentient fragment of reality that wants to be at Castle Vulkihar right now. She is the vessel for a destiny that was written before she was born, and the scroll is practically steering her toward a confrontation that could end the world. The journey from Dimhollow to the nearest boat transport, usually near dawn if you've timed your dungeon delve right, is quiet. Serana is reserved. She comments on the weather. "I've never seen Skyrim this snowy," which again reinforces the time jump. The climate has shifted since her era. but her silence regarding the scroll is deafening. She knows the Dragonborn wants it, Isran wants it, the vampires want it. She's the centre of a tug of war, and the rope is a golden tube capable of blotting out the sun. Speaking of blotting out the sun, this is where the irony becomes palpable. The prophecy contained within this specific scroll, the tyranny of the sun, foretells a world where vampires rule because the sun has been darkened. It is the ultimate goal of her father, Lord Harkon. Yet, the scroll is in the possession of the one person who seems most hesitant about that future. Serana enjoys the shadows, certainly. She hoods up immediately when the sun rises, but she doesn't seem to crave the domination of the world. She carries the key to her father's victory, yet her awakening was triggered by the one hero capable of stopping it. It's a delicious paradox. The fan community has long debated the nature of the Elder Scrolls' truth. A popular fan theory posits that the Elder Scrolls are actually a meta-representation of the game's code or the developer's script. When an NPC reads a scroll and goes blind, it's because they have glimpsed the source code of their reality, the ones and zeros that make up Tamriel, and their minds cannot comprehend that they are fictional constructs. In this light, Serana carrying the scroll on her back is symbolic of her being a main character in the narrative. She's literally carrying the plot armor. It explains why she is essential, why she cannot die, and why the world seems to bend around her journey. She is tethered to the script in a way no other follower is. But back on the snowy road, the reality is more grounded and much colder. The wind whips around the Dragonborn's armor, and Serana pulls her cloak tighter. The scroll clanks softly against her pauldrons with every step. It's a rhythmic reminder of the stakes. If a bandit were to jump out from behind a rock right now, and let's be honest, this is Skyrim, so 3 bandits and a saber cat are probably waiting around the next bend. They would see a woman carrying a king's ransom in gold plating, but if they touched it, they'd likely have their brains melted. As they navigate the treacherous ice floes of the northern coast, heading toward the ferryman who can take them to the castle Vulkihar, the relationship between the Dragonborn and Serana begins to form around this object. It's an unspoken truce. I won't take the scroll from you, if you trust me to lead the way. It's the first step in a long road of building trust. The Dragonborn defends her from the roaming gargoyles and wandering giants, proving that they are not just another captor, and in return, Serana doesn't bolt into the woods with the most dangerous weapon in existence. The scroll also serves as a beacon. Throughout the trek, you might notice the purple magic effects of the Drain Life spell Serana uses in combat reflecting off the golden casing. It's a beautiful, lethal light show. The visual design of the scroll on her back was a deliberate choice by Bethesda to make her silhouette unique. In a game where silhouettes are often bulky and undefined, Serana is sharp, angular, and crowned with that golden cylinder. It marks her as other. It marks her as important. Even if you stripped her of her royal armour, that scroll would identify her as the herald of the prophecy. There is also a tactile sense of heaviness in the animation work. When Serana stops to idle, she sometimes shifts her weight, adjusting the straps. It's a subtle animation, but it conveys so much. The scroll is a physical burden as much as a metaphorical one. It's heavy, it's awkward, and it's likely uncomfortable to sleep with. Yet she never complains about it. It is her cross to bear, or perhaps more accurately her tombstone to carry. She was buried with it, and now she walks with it. As the coastline comes into view, the grey waters of the Sea of Ghosts churning against the ice, the scroll seems to catch the glint of the pale, distant sun. It's a reminder of what is at stake. That sun, currently providing a meagre amount of warmth to the frozen landscape, is the target. The thing on Serana's back contains the instructions on how to kill it. It's a chilling thought to entertain while you're just trying to find a boat. The Dragonborn is escorting a walking apocalypse, and for now, the only thing keeping the world safe is the uncertainty of a vampire girl who just wants to see if her castle is still standing. The weight of the Elder Scroll is not just in its gold and metal. It is in the silence it creates between the two travellers. It is the elephant in the room, or rather, the cosmic artifact on the back. It demands attention, yet defies explanation. And as the foggy outline of Castle Vulkihar begins to materialise in the distance, rising like a jagged tooth from the sea, the burden of that scroll is about to become infinitely heavier. For Serana, the scroll was a companion in the dark. For her father, it is the key to a kingdom, and the collision of those two perspectives is going to shake the foundations of Skyrim. The icy spray of the Sea of Ghosts stings the face, a sharp reminder of the mortal coil, but Serana doesn't flinch. As the small boat cuts through the freezing mist toward the jagged silhouette of Castle Vulkihar, the silence between the Dragonborn and the vampire deepens. It's not just the quiet of the ocean, it's the quiet of a history so heavy it threatens to capsize the vessel. We know she is a vampire, yes. We've seen the glowing eyes and the drain life spells, but to categorize Serana merely as a vampire is like calling a dragon a large lizard. It misses the terrifying nuance of her existence. She isn't just infected, she is a daughter of Coldharbor. Let's pause on that title for a moment. In the hierarchy of Skyrim's undead, there are your run-of-the-mill fledglings who caught sanguinar vampirus from a dirty cave bat, and then there is Serana. This distinction is crucial and forms a core in-game fact that defines her entire character arc. A Daughter of Coldharbor is a female vampire who has been granted her vampirism directly from the source, Molag Bal, the Daedric Prince of Domination. This isn't a disease you cure with a potion or a prayer at a shrine. This is a fundamental rewriting of the soul's code, executed by one of the most malevolent entities in the Orbis. To understand Serana, you have to understand the ritual that made her. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a bite in the dark. It was a planned ceremonial event orchestrated by her father, Lord Harkon. Harkon, in his infinite lust for power, pledged his family to Molag Bal. He sacrificed 1,000 innocents to the prince, a number that is easy to glaze over in dialogue but horrific if you actually visualize the scale of that slaughter. In exchange, the prince granted Harkon and his family the gift of pure blood. But for the women of the family, the gift came with a much more personal and traumatic price. The lore regarding the creation of a Daughter of Coldharbor is some of the darkest in the Elder Scrolls canon. While the game dialogue dances around the specifics with a graceful ambiguity, Serana simply says the ceremony was degrading. The subtext is screaming at us. Molag Bal is the prince of rape and domination. His sphere of influence is the forcible subjugation of mortals. The ritual to become a Daughter of Coldharbor involves a direct, violent encounter with the prince himself. It is a survival horror story compressed into a single night. There is an obscure lore tidbit found in the text Opusculus Lame Balta Mesamorti, which details the origin of the very first vampire, Lame Beolfag. In that text, Molag Bal's savage assault on the Nedic Virgin is what birthed the vampire race. The Rite of the Scion, or the ritual Serana underwent, is a ceremonial reenactment of that primal trauma. She was not just bitten, she was broken and remade. When Serana tells the Dragonborn that she survived the ritual, she implies that many do not. The mortality rate is high because the trauma, physical, spiritual and mental, is designed to shatter the vessel. Only those with the strongest will, or perhaps the coldest hearts, emerge from the other side. This context reframes everything about her behaviour. Her aloofness, her hesitation to trust, her constant defensive posture. These aren't just teenage angst. They are the scars of a survivor who was offered up by her own parents to a demon god. Imagine the psychological landscape of a young woman whose father says, "I love you, so I'm going to give you to the king of rape so we can rule the world." It's a betrayal so profound it defies typical family therapy solutions. This leads us to a fascinating area of community debate and fan theory, the question of consent. Did Serana know what she was signing up for? In her dialogue, she defends the decision initially, claiming she and her mother were devout followers of Molag Bal, and that they sought this power. Fans often debate whether this was genuine willingness, or the result of intense grooming and indoctrination. Growing up in a cult, which the Vulkihar clan essentially is, normalizes the horrific. It is highly probable that Serana believed this was a holy honor right up until the moment the ritual began. By then, it was too late. The realization that her parents viewed her as a currency to purchase power likely hit her simultaneously with the trauma of the transformation. Physically, the change is absolute. As a pure-blood vampire, Serana possesses a connection to Coldharbor that lesser vampires do not. This is why she looks different. The glowing eyes are a mark of the Daedra's direct influence. Her blood is potent enough to blot out the sun when mixed with Auriel's bow. She is, in essence, a living artifact of Oblivion walking on Neon. This biological difference explains why she was locked in a crypt for thousands of years without withering away into dust. She's sustained not just by blood, but by the Dark Pact itself. She's timeless because she belongs to a realm where time is meaningless. As the boat bumps against the rotting wood of the Castle Vulkihar docks, the reality of her origin becomes a tangible weight. She's returning to the scene of the crime. This isn't just a homecoming, it's a return to the torture chamber. The castle, with its imposing Gothic spires and gargoyles, is a monument to the pact that ruined her life. Every stone in that fortress was likely paid for with the blood of the innocents Harkon sacrificed. The atmosphere here is thick with dread. The skeleton ferryman, who, let's be honest, has the most boring job in Skyrim, stares ahead with empty sockets, a silent witness to the monsters that come and go. Serana steps onto the dock, her boots echoing on the wet wood. She looks up at the castle towers, and for a fleeting moment, the mask slips. You see the apprehension. She isn't afraid of the vampires inside, she can handle them. She's afraid of who she was when she lived here. She's afraid of the memories of that ritual night, memories that have likely replayed in her mind during her millennia of sleep in Dimhollow. The power she wields, the necromancy, the ice spikes, the ability to turn into a vampire lord, is all fruit of the poison tree. Every time she casts a spell, she is drawing on the power granted by her tormentor. It's a horrific irony. To survive the dangers of Skyrim and protect the Dragonborn, she must use the very gifts that signify her damnation. Furthermore, being a daughter of Coldharbor makes her a unique entity in the eyes of the other Daedric princes. We often forget that the princes are jealous siblings. By carrying Molag Bal's mark so prominently, Serana is a walking affront to Arche, the god of the cycle of life and death, and Meridia, who hates the undead. Her very existence is a cosmic insult to the natural order. This explains why the vigilance of Stendarr and the Dawnguard are so zealous. They aren't just hunting a predator, they're trying to scrub a blasphemous stain from reality. Yet, despite this dark origin, Serana retains a surprising amount of humanity. This is the paradox that makes her so compelling. One would expect a being forged in the fires of Coldharbor to be a soulless husk or a sadistic monster like Harkon. But Serana likes the weather. She makes jokes about caves. She criticises the architectural choices of the dwarves. Somewhere deep beneath the layers of trauma and Daedric corruption, the girl she was before the ritual is still fighting for air. It raises the question, is she a daughter of Coldharbor because of what was done to her? Or is she something else entirely? Something that survived despite Coldharbor? Her difference, the very title of our chronicle tonight, stems from this resistance. Harkon accepted the gift and let it consume his soul. Valerica accepted it and let it consume her paranoia. Serana accepted it, survived it, and somehow kept a piece of herself separate from it. She's a vessel of Molag Bal who refuses to act like one. As they walk up the stone causeway toward the main gate, the gargoyles perched high above seem to sneer. The iron portcullis looms ahead, a barrier between the open world and the suffocating darkness of the Vulkihar court. Serana pauses, taking a deep breath, a habit she doesn't need for oxygen but for grounding. I'm ready, she lies. Or maybe she isn't lying. Maybe she's just resigned. The Dragonborn stands beside her, a witness to this dark pilgrimage. You're not just escorting a princess back to her castle, you're escorting a survivor back to her abuser. The Secrets of Serana are not just about game mechanics or hidden dialogue lines. They're about the endurance of the self in the face of absolute violation. She is a daughter of Coldharbor, yes. But as the gates creak open, revealing the feasting hall inside, it becomes clear that she intends to be a very rebellious daughter. The darkness of the castle interior spills out to meet them, smelling of old meat and magic. The reunion is at hand. And for Serana, the horror of her origin is about to confront the horror of her present. The ritual that made her is over, but the consequences are standing in the main hall, likely holding a goblet of blood and waiting for an apology. The great doors of Castle Vulkihar swing open with a groan that sounds suspiciously like a warning, revealing a scene that is equal parts majesty and monstrosity. If you were expecting a warm family reunion with hugs and maybe a welcome home banner, you are playing the wrong game. The interior of the castle is a sensory assault. The air is thick, humid, and carries the unmistakable metallic scent of blood, mixed with the musty odour of ancient stone. It's the smell of a butcher shop located inside a cathedral. As the Dragonborn and Serana step into the main hall, they are greeted by the sight of the Vulkihar court in full swing. This isn't just a home, it's a nest of vipers. Long tables are laden with gore, cattle, the thralls kept for feeding, wander in a daze or are being actively fed upon, and the vampires themselves lounge with an arrogance that only comes from being at the top of the food chain for several thousand years. It's a grotesque parody of a noble court. They hold goblets of blood like fine wine, discussing politics and power while wiping red stains from their lips. Serana walks through this carnage with her head high, but her body language tells a different story. She stays close to the Dragonborn. For a woman who just woke up from an epoch-long nap, the noise and the sheer density of malevolence must be overwhelming. She scans the faces of the vampires, Vingalmo, Orthiolf, Salonia, and recognises none of them. Her world, the court she knew, has been replaced by strangers who view her not as a princess, but as a curiosity, a relic that walked in the door. And then there is Lord Harkon. He stands at the far end of the hall near the fireplace, looking every bit the imperious overlord. His armour is distinct, regal, and terrifying. He doesn't rush forward to embrace his long-lost daughter. He doesn't weep with relief. He simply turns, his eyes glowing with that same eerie orange light, and assesses the situation. The tension in the room snaps tight. The chatter of the other vampires dies down. All eyes are on the girl with the Elder Scroll and the stranger in the heavy armour. This moment brings us to a core in-game fact that defines the entire emotional arc of the Dawnguard DLC. Harkon loves the prophecy more than he loves his daughter. It's not even a contest. His first words aren't "my child, you're safe," but rather a demanding inquiry about the Elder Scroll. He looks at the massive golden artifact strapped to her back before he even looks her in the eye. It is a devastatingly cold interaction. You can almost see Serana shrink a little, the hope draining out of her posture. She tries to engage him, calling him father, but he steamrolls over her sentimentality to focus on his obsession. To Harkon, Serana is a container. She is the packaging for the Elder Scroll. He's like a man who receives a package in the mail and tears through the box without a second thought to get to the item inside, except the box is his flesh and blood, and he hasn't seen her in millennia. The tragedy is that Serana clearly expected this on some level. She warned the Dragonborn that her father wasn't exactly warm, but the reality of it, the public dismissal in front of his court, stings. It confirms her worst fear. She was locked away not to keep her safe, but to keep her on ice until she was useful. The court dynamic here is worth noting. The vampires of Vulkihar are not a unified family. They are a pit of backstabbers. As you walk through the hall, you can overhear snippets of dialogue between Vingalmo and Orthiolf, the two lieutenants vying for Harkon's favour. They are sycophants of the highest order. This political manoeuvring provides a sharp contrast to the raw ancient power of Serana. She doesn't need to curry favour, she is the bloodline. Yet, she is the outsider. The court looks at her with jealousy. She has the pure blood, the direct link to Molag Bal, and the scroll. She is everything they want to be, and they hate her for it. Let's take a detour into an obscure lore tidbit that makes this homecoming even stranger. If you read the in-game book Immortal Blood, it describes the various vampire clans of Tamriel. The author, Movath Pikin, describes the Vulkihar clan of Skyrim not as sophisticated aristocrats living in a castle, but as savages who live beneath the ice of frozen lakes. According to the lore, they reach through the ice to pull unsuspecting victims down into the freezing depths. Now, look around the room. These vampires are wearing velvet. They are eating off plates. They have a castle. What gives? It suggests that Harkon has fundamentally changed the nature of his clan over the centuries, or perhaps Immortal Blood was based on myths and misunderstandings. But it adds a layer of uncanny wrongness to the scene. Serana comes from an even older version of this clan. Is she used to the ice-dwelling savagery, or was the castle always there? The discrepancy between the feral vampire under the ice law and the vampire royalty reality highlights just how much Harkon has constructed a facade of civilization around his monsterhood. He wants to be a king, not just a predator. And kings need heirs, or in his case, sacrifices. Harkon's dismissal of Serana is interrupted only by his interest in the Dragonborn. "And who is this?" he asks, looking at you like you're a piece of meat that learned to perform card tricks. Serana steps in, defending you. "He saved me," she says. It's a small moment, but pivotal. In a room full of her family, the only person she trusts is the random adventurer she met an hour ago in a crypt. She aligns herself with you against her father within minutes of returning home. It is the first crack in the foundation of House Vulkihar. This scene also fuels a long-standing fan theory regarding Harkon's competence. Why did he need the Dragonborn to free Serana? He's a powerful vampire lord. He has an army of gargoyles and deathhounds. Why didn't he march into Dimhollow Crypt himself? Some fans argue that the magical seal on Dimhollow was specifically keyed to reject vampires, hence why the blood puzzle required a living mortal, or the Dragonborn's unique blood. Others suggest Harkon is simply a coward who feared the traps set by the ancient Nords or Valerica. But the most compelling theory is that he didn't care enough to try. He was content to wait. To an immortal, 1,000 years is a lazy Sunday. He only started looking when the prophecy began to manifest signs of activation. This paints Harkon not just as evil, but as profoundly lazy and entitled. He expected the world to deliver his daughter back to him when the time was right. And tragically it did. The Dragonborn did all the heavy lifting, fought the gargoyles, solved the puzzles, and delivered the prize to his doorstep. As the conversation progresses, Harkon offers the Dragonborn his gift, the blood of the vampire lord, as a reward. Serana watches this exchange closely. If you accept, she seems almost resigned, perhaps even a bit disappointed that you've joined the madness. If you refuse and Harkon banishes you, she's distressed. But regardless of the player's choice, the die is cast. Serana is home, but she's also a prisoner again. The castle walls, once a symbol of her heritage, now loom over her like the bars of a cage. She wanders the main hall while Harkon retreats to his chambers, likely to stare at maps and cackle. She looks at the cattle with a mix of pity and disgust. She realizes that while the world outside has moved on, empires have risen and fallen, technology has changed, magic has shifted, this castle has remained a stagnant pool of corruption. Her father hasn't grown, he has just rotted in place. The cold homecoming isn't just about the temperature of the Skyrim air, it's about the absolute zero of Harkon's heart. He has stripped the humanity out of the family. He doesn't ask about her mother, Valerica. He doesn't ask how she feels. He's a machine of ambition. And Serana, standing there in her ancient armour, clutching the scroll, realises that she is alone. The realization is quieter than a scream, but far more damaging. She has travelled through time to find that there is nothing left for her here but duty and death. As the Dragonborn leaves, either as a banished mortal or a new fledgling sent to get training, Serana remains behind. We can imagine her standing in that great bloody hall surrounded by sycophants who whisper behind their hands. She likely retreats to a quiet corner, away from the feasting, and perhaps touches the stone walls, trying to find a memory of a time when this place wasn't a nightmare. But the memories are tainted. The shadow of Molag Bal hangs over everything. She is the princess of Vulkihar, yet she has never been less royal. She's a tool, a battery, a means to an end. And as the heavy doors boom shut, sealing her, in with the monsters, the secret of this section becomes clear. Serana's true strength isn't her magic or her bloodline. It's her ability to look at her father, the most powerful vampire in history, and see him for exactly what he is, a small, sad, broken man. And in that realization the seeds of rebellion are sown. She won't stay a prisoner forever. The Dragonborn may have left the building, but the alliance forged in Dimhollow is still active. She will wait. She will watch. And when the time comes, she will choose her own family. Leaving the suffocating politics of Castle Vulkihar behind, the Dragonborn returns to the open road, and it is here that Serana truly begins to shine, not just as a plot device, but as a presence. If you have spent any significant amount of time in Skyrim, you are familiar with the standard follower experience. You hire a mercenary like Janassa, or you inherit a housecarl like Lydia. They are loyal, certainly. They are effective meat shields. But they are also, for lack of a better word, furniture. They stand where you tell them to stand. They stare blankly at the back of your head while you barter with merchants. They block doorways with the stubbornness of a pack mule. Serana is different. From the moment she joins you permanently, you realise that something in her coding is fundamentally more advanced. She doesn't just follow, she inhabits the world. This brings us to the technical marvel of her sandboxing AI. In game development terms, a sandbox package is a set of instructions that tells an NPC what to do when they aren't in combat or conversation. For most followers in the base game of Skyrim, this package is extremely limited. It basically says, stand within 5 feet of the player. If the player stops, you stop. Look at the player. Breathe. It's functional but robotic. It reminds you constantly that you are playing a video game. Serana's sandbox package, however, is turned up to 11. It dictates that if the Dragonborn stands still for more than a few seconds, she should look for something to interact with. She is hyperactive. She is curious. She is undeniably restless. Picture this scene. The Dragonborn enters the High Hrothgar courtyard to speak with the Greybeards about the fate of the world. It's a sombre moment, filled with philosophical gravity. As the player listens to Arngeir drone on about the way of the voice, a loud clang 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 erupts in the background. You turn the camera and there is Serana, happily hammering away at a forge, repairing a dagger she doesn't use. Or perhaps she's at the grindstone, sparks flying everywhere, completely drowning out the ancient wisdom of the monks. It is a core in-game fact that Serana will interact with almost every furniture object in the game. If there is a chair, she sits in it. If there is an alchemy lab, she starts mixing potions. If there is a tanning rack, she's suddenly scraping leather. She leans against walls, arms crossed, looking bored. She sits on the floor cross-legged in a meditative pose. She even claps for the bards in taverns, sometimes dancing a little jig if the song is right. While this can be occasionally immersion-breaking, like when she decides to sweep the floor of a dungeon you just cleared of Driga, it serves a brilliant narrative purpose. Think about her backstory. She's been trapped in a stone sarcophagus, unable to move a muscle, for thousands of years. She's been sensory deprived for eons. Now that she's free, she has an insatiable need to touch reality. She needs to feel the weight of the hammer, the texture of the leather, the wood of the chair. She's reaffirming her existence through tactile interaction. She can't stand still, because stillness reminds her of the crypt. This behaviour makes her feel alive in a way no other NPC does. When you walk into an inn and sit down by the fire, Lydia will stand awkwardly by the table, staring at you while you eat your bread. Serana, on the other hand, will grab a tankard, sit in the chair opposite you and take a drink. Suddenly, it's not a player and an NPC. It's 2 travellers sharing a meal. It creates a dynamic of companionship that transcends the code. You feel like you are travelling with someone, rather than dragging someone along. However, this liveliness comes with its own set of chaotic side effects, which the fan community has turned into endless memes. Serana has absolutely no sense of social propriety. Players have reported her sitting on the Jarl's throne while the Jarl is standing right there delivering a speech. She has been seen eating bread while the Dragonborn is absorbing a dragon soul. There is a famous clip of a player getting married in the Temple of Mara, and in the background Serana is using the enchanting table, the magical roaring sound completely ruining the romantic vows. These moments, while technically glitches or oversight in the interrupt priority of her AI, have endeared her to the community. We forgive her for ruining the moment because it's just so Serana. It gives her a personality that feels distinct from the stoic warriors or obedient mages we're used to. She's independent, she does what she wants. If she wants to sharpen a sword in the middle of a funeral, she's going to do it. From a development perspective, there is an obscure lore tidbit regarding why she acts this way. Bethesda developers have hinted in interviews that Serana's AI was essentially a prototype for the companion system seen in Fallout 4. If you've played that game, you know that companions like Piper or Nick Valentine also interact with the world, sitting in chairs, inspecting items, leaning on counters. Serana was the testbed for this living companion technology. She was the bridge between the static followers of Oblivion and Skyrim base game and the more dynamic, reactive companions of the later Bethesda titles. She literally carries the DNA of future games in her scripting. This advanced behaviour also extends to her combat AI, which is noticeably more aggressive and magic-heavy than others. But it's the quiet moments that truly define her. The leaning animation is particularly potent. When you stop in a dungeon hallway to check your map, and you look up to see her leaning casually against the damp stone wall. Hip-cocked, waiting for you to figure it out, it conveys a sense of patience and competence. She isn't a mindless soldier awaiting orders, she's a partner waiting for you, to get your act together. There is also a subtle, darker layer to her interactions. Sometimes she will interact with objects that are specific to the location in disturbing ways. In torture chambers or dungeons with gruesome decorations, her use object script might trigger her to interact with shackles or torture racks if they are tagged as furniture in the game files. Seeing Serana casually stand near a torture rack in a vampire lair is a chilling reminder of her upbringing. To her, these things are normal. They are just part of the furniture of her childhood. It reinforces the idea that her baseline for normalcy is skewered by her life in Coldharbor and Castle Vulkihar. The community debate around her AI often centres on whether it makes her too intrusive. Some players find the constant noise of her crafting distractions to be annoying, preferring the silent obedience of a housecarl. But the overwhelming consensus is that the trade-off is worth it. The alive AI creates a bond. When she sits down next to you, it triggers a psychological response in the player. I am not alone. In a game as vast and often lonely as Skyrim, that feeling is precious. Furthermore, this behaviour masks the limitations of the game's dialogue system. Serana has a lot of lines, yes, voiced beautifully by Laura Bailey, but she still repeats herself. I've heard about the Dawnguard, or let's get indoors or in a cave, become repetitive. But because she is physically doing things, moving, touching, working, the repetition of dialogue is less jarring. Her physical actions fill the silence with personality, so she doesn't need to speak to feel present. Her sandboxing also serves as a visual storytelling tool for her growing humanity. In the beginning, she interacts with things tentatively. As the quest progresses, and she spends more time with the Dragonborn and the Dawnguard, if you side with them, her interactions with mortal objects, cooking pots, farm tools, seem to symbolise her integration into the living world. She's learning to be a person, not just a vampire princess. She's trying on the role of a normal adventurer, one crafting table at a time. It is also worth noting her pathfinding. Because her AI is more complex, she's slightly better at navigating terrain than standard followers, though she still gets stuck on the occasional rock. But when she does get stuck, she often teleports or sprints to catch up, whereas Lydia might just vanish for 3 days until you fast travel. Serana's script prioritises staying with the player, reinforcing her dependency on you as her guide in this new era. Ultimately, Serana's alive AI changes the genre of the game. With a standard follower, Skyrim is an action RPG where you manage a unit. With Serana, it becomes a buddy road trip movie. You are the brawny driver, and she is the restless passenger who keeps fiddling with the radio and rolling down the window. She changes the atmosphere of the journey. The empty spaces of the map feel less empty when you can hear her footsteps and see her investigating a patch of glowing mushrooms while you catch your breath. So, the next time you're trying to listen to a Daedric prince threaten you with eternal torment, and you hear the distinctive shh of someone using a sharpening wheel in the background, don't get mad. Smile. It's just Serana, proving that she's still here, still bored, and still desperately trying to make up for 4,000 years of doing absolutely nothing. She's more than a follower. She's a chaotic, noisy, living variable in your equation, and the game is infinitely better for it. After the icy reception in the Great Hall and the realization that home is now a hostile environment, the narrative pivots to a detective story. Serana and the Dragonborn are forced to scour the unused ruined wings of Castle Vulkihar to find out where her mother, Valerica, went. Harkon claims she left or betrayed him, but he's about as reliable as a bridge salesman in Riften. To find the truth, we have to find the lab. The journey takes us out the back door into the castle courtyard. This area is a stark contrast to the oppressive gloom of the interior. It's overgrown, wild, and bathed in the pale light of the moon, if it's night, or the grey fog of the day. It's a garden of death. Strange, toxic flora grows here, plants that seem to thrive on blood and bone meal rather than sunlight and water. It is here that we encounter the famous Moondial puzzle. This puzzle is a core in-game fact that players often stumble through. In the centre of the courtyard stands a large astronomical device, a sundial, but calibrated for the phases of the moons, Massa and Secunda. It's missing 3 crests. To proceed, the Dragonborn must scavenge the overgrown garden to find these missing pieces. It's a quiet, contemplative sequence. You're digging through the physical remnants of Valerica's life. Each crest you find, full moon, half moon, crescent moon, feels like putting together pieces of a shattered family portrait. As the final crest clicks into place, the mechanism grinds open, revealing a spiral staircase descending into the dark. This leads to the ruined tower, and ultimately Valerica's hidden laboratory. Stepping into this lab is like stepping inside Valerica's mind. It is a space of intense intellect and paranoia. Shelves aligned with soul gems, alchemical ingredients, and books on high-level necromancy. Unlike Harkon's quarters, which are designed to intimidate, this room is designed to work. It is cluttered, lived in, and strangely cozy in a mad scientist sort of way. But the centerpiece of this room is not the alchemy table or the enchanting station. It is the small red book left on the desk, Valerica's journal. It is in reading this journal that the true scope of the betrayal comes into focus. For the first time, Serana learns the real reason she was locked in that crypt. It wasn't just to keep her safe from vampire hunters or the passage of time. It was to hide her from her father. Valerica had discovered the fine print of the Tyranny of the Sun prophecy. The prophecy states that the blood of a daughter of Coldharbor will blind the eye of the dragon. Harkon, in his arrogance, read this as a generic requirement. Any daughter of Coldharbor would do. But Valerica, being the sharper scholar, realised the implication. Since she and Serana are the only two daughters of Coldharbor in the vicinity, and likely in existence given how rare the ritual is, the prophecy was a death sentence for one of them, and here is where the knife twists. Valerica didn't lock Serana away to save Serana's life for Serana's sake. She locked her away to deny Harkon his ammunition. Serana wasn't a child to be protected, she was a strategic resource to be hoarded. Valerica reasoned that if she removed the battery, Serana, from the equation, Harkon's weapon, the prophecy, would never fire. This revelation hit Serana hard. Standing in that dusty lab, surrounded by the smell of dried herbs and old parchment, she has to confront the fact that her mother was playing the same game as her father, just on the defensive team. "She intended for me to die here?" Serana asks, her voice trembling. It's a moment of profound disillusionment. She realises she has been a pawn in a marital dispute that has lasted for thousands of years. The text of the journal reveals an obscure lore tidbit about the specific nature of the ingredients Valerica was researching. She was obsessed with the soul Cairn, a plane of oblivion inhabited by the ideal masters. The journal details her experiments with portal magic, noting that she needed a formula involving finely ground bone meal, purified void salts, and soul gem shards to open a stable gateway. Why the soul Cairn? Because it is one of the few places in the Orbis where Valerica believed Harkon could not, or would not, follow. The ideal masters are hoarders of souls, and they do not take kindly to trespassers, even powerful vampire lords. Valerica essentially fled to a prison dimension because she preferred the company of soul-eating giant crystals to her own husband. That is a grim testament to just how bad things had gotten in the Vulkihar household. But let's look closer at the protection aspect. Valerica's plan was objectively cruel. She sealed her daughter in a stone box, buried her deep underground, filled the cave with death traps, and left her there for millennia. Imagine the psychological horror of that. Serana went to sleep thinking she was part of a holy mission or a safety protocol, only to wake up and realise she was just a piece of evidence being hidden from the police. This brings us to a heated community debate. Is Valerica actually a villain? Many fans argue that Valerica is the lesser of two evils, a desperate mother doing what she had to do to save the world from eternal darkness. After all, if Harkon succeeds, the sun goes out, the ecosystems collapse, and mortals, the food supply, die off. Valerica prevented this. She is, in a utilitarian sense, a hero. However, a strong counter-argument exists, one that aligns more with Serana's perspective. Valerica robbed her daughter of her life. She took away her agency. She didn't explain the plan, she just executed it. This is the ultimate helicopter parent move, taken to a supernatural extreme. She grounded her daughter for 4,000 years. Fans debate whether Valerica actually loves Serana, or if she views Serana as an extension of herself, a possession that she refuses to let Harkon break. It's the difference between "I love you" and "you are mine." The dynamic in the lab reinforces this. Serana looks at the portal ingredients, the bowl of bone meal, the shards, and you can see the conflict in her eyes. She wants to find her mother, yes, she needs answers, but the blind trust is gone. The Serana who walks out of Dimhollow Crypt is a confused girl looking for her family. The Serana who walks out of Valerica's lab is a woman realizing she might be an orphan in every way that matters. The alchemy of the portal itself is symbolic. To open the way to Valerica, the Dragonborn must mix these ingredients in a vessel and add their own blood, or Serana's. It requires a sacrifice of essence. It mirrors the blood ritual at Dimhollow. It seems the Vulkihar family cannot do anything without bleeding on it first. As the Dragonborn gathers the ingredients from the shelves, carefully stepping over the skeletal remains of Valerica's failed experiments, the atmosphere of the lab tells a story of obsession. Valerica didn't just leave. She planned this escape for decades, maybe centuries. She curated this garden. She built the moon dial. She was meticulous. This wasn't a panic move. It was a cold, calculated withdrawal. And in all that planning, she never thought to maybe ask Serana what she wanted. There is a tragic irony in Valerica's Garden of the Dead in the courtyard. She spent years cultivating beautiful, deadly plants in the moonlight, trying to create a sanctuary. Yet, she ended up in the Soul Cairn, a place where nothing grows, where the skies are bruised purple and the ground is made of ash. She traded a garden of life in death for a wasteland of eternal stagnation. It reflects her parenting style. In trying to preserve Serana, she stagnated her. She put her in stasis. When Serana speaks in this section, her tone shifts from confusion to a sharper, more cynical edge. She never trusted me, she says. She thought I would run to him. This is the crux of the betrayal. Valerica didn't trust Serana to resist Harkon's manipulation, so she removed the choice entirely. It's a vote of no confidence that stings more than any physical wound. We also see the Dragonborn stepping into the role of the mediator here. You are the one reading the journal aloud. You're the one putting the pieces together. Serana is too close to it. She's too emotional. You have to be the one to say, it looks like she went to the Soul Cairn. You are the anchor keeping her from spiraling into a rage or a breakdown. The section closes as the ingredients are mixed. The portal to the Soul Cairn begins to form, a swirling violet rift in the centre of the room. It looks remarkably similar to the energy that held Serana in the crypt. The visual parallel is intentional. To find the mother who locked her away, Serana must step into another prison. The secret of Valerica isn't just that. She is in the Soul Cairn. It's that she is the architect of Serana's trauma just as much as Harkon is. Harkon provided the monster, Valerica provided the cage. And as the Dragonborn and Serana prepare to step into the portal, they aren't just going on a rescue mission. They're going to a confrontation. Serana isn't going to the Soul Cairn to be saved, she's going to get an explanation. The purple light of the portal illuminates Serana's face, casting deep shadows. She checks her gear, she adjusts the Elder Scroll, she looks ready for war. But the enemy this time isn't a vampire lord or a dragon, it's the woman who taught her how to braid her hair. Let's get this over with, she says, her voice flat, and with that she steps toward the rift. The lab with its dust and its secrets is left behind. The answers lie in Oblivion. With the heavy realization of her mother's betrayal hanging in the air like smoke, and the dark potential of the Soul Cairn looming on the horizon, we must take a brief step back to address a practical problem. Serana is carrying an Elder Scroll. Harkon wants it. The Dawnguard wants it. But here is the catch. Nobody can read the blasted thing. It is the ultimate encrypted file, a cosmic USB drive formatted for an operating system that no longer exists. To unlock the path to the Soul Cairn and understand the tyranny of the Sun prophecy, raw power isn't enough. We need a specialist. We need a moth priest. This phase of the journey highlights a significant shift in Serana's dynamic with the world. Up until now, she has been the authority on her own history. She knew the crypt, she knew the castle, she knew the politics of her clan. But when the Dragonborn mentions a moth priest, Serana is stumped. She's been asleep for eras. The cult of the ancestor moth is a relatively modern imperial institution in her eyes, or at least one she never bothered to learn about. For the first time, the ancient vampire princess is the ignorant one, forced to rely entirely on the Dragonborn's knowledge of current events and imperial bureaucracy. The search leads the duo to Dragon Bridge, a misty grey hamlet that feels like it's barely clinging to the edge of the map. The residents here are skittish, speaking of a carriage that passed through with an imperial escort, and the vampires who ambushed it. It's a messy scene. Overturned carts, bodies left in the mud, and a note found on a corpse pointing toward a place called Forebear's Holdout. Serana's reaction to this investigation is telling. She's used to direct action, domination, killing, feeding. The idea of asking a guard, "Excuse me, did you see a priest go by?" is alien to her. She watches the Dragonborn navigate the social web of Skyrim with a mix of curiosity and impatience. She's learning that in this era, information is sometimes more valuable than blood magic. The trail ends at Forebear's Holdout, a location that deserves a moment of appreciation. When you step inside, you aren't greeted by the usual damp gloom of a Nordic barrow. Instead, you walk into a lush, subterranean forest. A natural skylight in the cavern ceiling lets in beams of real sunlight, feeding a small ecosystem of trees, grass, and rushing water deep underground. It is one of the most visually distinct and beautiful locations in the expansion, a hidden oasis of life. However, the serenity is ruined by the presence of Malchus, a vampire thrallmaster, and his subordinates. They have captured the moth priest, Dexion Evicus, and are in the middle of a ritual to break his mind. This brings us to a core in-game fact regarding the Waystone focus. To reach Dexion, the Dragonborn must loot a magical stone, the Waystone focus, from the corpse of Malchus to deactivate the magical barrier imprisoning the priest. It's a classic video game keycard mechanic, but notice Serana's behaviour during the fight. She doesn't hesitate to kill Malchus. To an outsider, this is just a vampire killing a vampire. But to Serana, this is her killing a reflection of her father's philosophy. Malchus is enslaving a mortal mind to serve a higher vampire power. By putting an ice spike through Malchus's chest, Serana is symbolically rejecting the methodology of House Vulkihar. She is saving the cattle rather than feeding on it. Once the barrier drops, the situation gets complicated. Dexion isn't grateful. He's thralled. He attacks with a frenzy that betrays the immense mental strain he's under. The Dragonborn and Serana have to beat him into submission, a technical knockout rescue. It's messy, it's violent, and it underscores the brutality of the vampire charm spells. When Dexion finally shakes off the influence, holding his head and groaning, Serana stands back. She doesn't rush to comfort him. She's wary. She knows that to this priest she's a monster just as much as Malchus was. Dexion Evicus is a fascinating character in his own right. He's an old man, weary but dignified, wearing the blindfold that marks his order. This leads to an obscure lore tidbit about the ancestor moths themselves. These moths are not just insects. They are conduits of the raw energy of the Elder Scrolls. The priests cultivate them, sing to them, and use the song of the moths to interpret the shifting glyphs of the scrolls. It is a soft, organic form of magic that contrasts sharply with the jagged, violent magic of the vampires. The lore states that reading the scrolls is a gradual process of sacrificing one's sight for knowledge. The more you read, the blinder you get, until the final reading takes your sight permanently but grants ultimate clarity. Dexion is not yet blind, at least not fully, but he is close. He agrees to return to the stronghold, Fort Dawnguard or Castle Vulkihar, depending on your allegiance, to read the scroll Serana has been lugging around. The reading ceremony is a moment of high theatre. Dexion unfurls the scroll, the golden metal expands, the glyphs shimmer in the air, and the room is bathed in that celestial headache-inducing light. Serana watches this with intense focus. This is the moment of truth. For thousands of years she has carried this object, assuming it held the key to her destiny. Now, an old man in a robe is reading it like the morning newspaper. Dexion's revelation is a gut punch. The scroll Serana carried is only one piece of the puzzle. It speaks of the blood of a daughter of Coldharbor, yes, but it also references two other scrolls, one concerning the dragon, the blood scroll, and one concerning the sun. To get the full picture, and specifically to find out how to stop or help Harkon, they need the complete set. This leads to a fan theory regarding Serana's agency. Many fans point out that Serana is essentially the quest, giver who doesn't know the quest. She drags you into this mess, but she has no plan. The reliance on Dexion highlights her vulnerability. Without the Empire's religious infrastructure, the Moth Priests, Serana would just be a girl with a heavy backpack and a bad dad. Some theories suggest that the protection Valerica engineered was flawed because it isolated Serana from the very knowledge she needed to end the threat. If she had stayed awake, she might have learned to read the scrolls herself or found someone who could, centuries ago. Instead, she was preserved in ignorance. The interaction with Dexion also forces Serana to confront the Empire she was so confused about in Dimhollow Crypt. Here is a representative of the Cyrodiilic Empire, a man of faith and duty helping her. If you are playing as a Dawnguard member, this is a crucial step in her humanization. She sees that mortals can be powerful, wise, and helpful. They aren't just food. Dexion treats the scroll with reverence, not greed. It's a stark contrast to Harkon, who looked at the scroll with hungry eyes. However, the scene ends on a sour note for the priest. The reading takes a toll. In the game, Dexion becomes exhausted, eventually losing his sight entirely if he's forced to read too many scrolls too quickly, or if he is mistreated by the vampires. Serana observes this sacrifice. She sees the physical cost of the prophecy. It's not just her blood that is required, it is Dexion's eyes. The tyranny of the sun is demanding payment from everyone who touches it. There is a quiet moment often missed by players after the reading. Serana will often sandbox near Dexion, sometimes sitting across from him. She doesn't say much, but her presence is heavy. She is the reason he is blind. She brought the scroll. She is the catalyst for his suffering. Does she feel guilt? Her dialogue remains guarded, but her alive AI keeps her lingering near the consequences of her actions. She doesn't walk away. She sits in the discomfort. The search for the Moth Priest serves a critical narrative function. It validates the threat. Until Dexion reads the scroll, Harkon's plan is just the raving of a lunatic. But Dexion confirms it. The prophecy is real. The sun can be darkened. The stakes skyrocket from dysfunctional family drama to global extinction event. This section also cements the partnership between the Dragonborn and Serana. They are now co-conspirators in a scavenger hunt for the remaining scrolls. The roadmap has expanded. They aren't just running from Harkon anymore, they're racing him. They need the other scrolls before he finds them. Serana shifts from being a refugee to being a treasure hunter. As they prepare to leave the stronghold to hunt down the next clue, which leads them back to the idea of Valerica and the Soul Cairn, Serana seems more determined. The ambiguity is gone. The scroll has spoken. The prophecy requires her blood, but it also requires her action. "We have to find my mother," she insists. The Moth Priest has done his part. He has pointed the finger at the missing pieces. Now the duo must go to the one place Dexion cannot reach and where the scrolls cannot help them. They must go to where the souls go when they are trapped. The hunt for Dexion was a test of their ability to work within the mortal world. They passed. They navigated the roads, the politics, and the ambush. But the next step requires them to leave the mortal world entirely. The comfort of the sandbox is about to be replaced by the alien geometry of the Soul Cairn. And Serana, who has just learned that her blood is the key to the end of the world, must now walk into the realm of the masters who own her soul. Stepping through the portal in Valerica's laboratory is not like walking through a door. It is like falling through a sheet of ice into a deep, frozen lake. The world of Skyrim, with its pine trees, grey rocks and biting wind, vanishes in an instant, replaced by a suffocating static-charged atmosphere that tastes like ozone and old pennies. The Dragonborn and Serana emerge on the other side, not into a dungeon, but into a vast open expanse of absolute desolation. Welcome to the Soul Cairn, the premier vacation destination for necromancers who didn't read the fine print on their contracts. The visual transition is jarring. The sky here is a bruised, eternal violet, roiling with silent storm clouds that never release rain, only flashes of jagged lightning. The ground is a cracked, arid wasteland of grey dust and black rock, dotted with the withered remains of trees that look like clawed hands reaching for help. It is a realm of monochromatic misery, broken only by the pulsing purple glow of the fissures in the earth. If Coldharbor is a torture chamber, the Soul Cairn is a purgatory of neglect. It feels abandoned, yet watched. Before they could even take this first step, however, a heavy toll had to be paid. This brings us to a crucial narrative beat that defines the Dragonborn's commitment to Serana. To enter the Soul Cairn as a living mortal is impossible. The realm is incompatible with life. The portal simply won't accept you. The player is faced with a choice. Become a vampire lord right then and there, accepting Harkon's gift to survive the journey, or undergo a partial soul trap. Most good aligned players choose the soul trap, allowing Serana to magically sever a portion of their soul to offer to the ideal masters as a toll. It is a deeply intimate and disturbing moment. Serana, who has spent the entire game guarding herself, must now reach into the Dragonborn's very essence and cut out a piece. It will weaken you, she warns, and she's right. This leads to the soul weakened debuff, a nagging status effect that reduces your stats while in the cairn. It's a ludonarrative masterstroke. You literally feel less whole while exploring this place. You are sluggish, fragile, a ghost in the making. Serana's reaction to the soul cairn is one of immediate visceral discomfort. She's undead, yes, but she's a creature of blood and flesh. This place is a realm of dust and spirit. I can hear them, she whispers, referring to the ambient moans of the trapped souls. It's louder than I expected. For a woman who grew up in a castle of horrors, the soul cairn unnerves her, because it represents the ultimate stagnation. Vampires may live forever, but they do things. The souls here just exist, wandering in aimless circles, trading their memories for a few moments of peace. As the duo navigates the treacherous, winding paths, they encounter the local wildlife, which is to say, skeletons. But not the rickety, fragile skeletons of Skyrim's crypts. These are bonemen, mistmen, and wrathmen. They're blackened, armoured, and tough. They rise from the dust with a fluid grace that suggests they are more than just animated bones. They are manifestations of the realm's will. Serana fights them with a particular ferocity. Perhaps she sees her own potential fate in them. If she were to die here, if her soul were claimed, she wouldn't go to the hunting grounds of Hircine or the halls of Sovngarde. She would end up as a pile of enchanted bones guarding a chest of loot for eternity. This brings us to a core in-game fact regarding the environmental hazards. Throughout the Soul Cairn, scattered amidst the ruins, are massive floating black crystals that hover above pedestals. These are not just decorations. If the Dragonborn or Serana steps too close, the crystals activate, glowing with a harsh red light and rapidly draining their health. These are the eyes of the Ideal Masters. The Ideal Masters are the entities who rule this plane, and they are one of the most enigmatic forces in Elder Scrolls lore. They do not appear as Daedric princes do. There is no guy with a horned helmet or a woman with a bird on her shoulder. They are abstract, malevolent intelligences that manifest as these giant, life-draining gems. They view souls not as people, but as currency and energy. The crystals are their straws, sipping the life force from anyone foolish enough to get close. Serana's warning when you approach one, "Stay back! That thing is draining your life!" is filled with genuine panic. She knows that these crystals are the landlords, and they are collecting rent. There is an obscure lore tidbit that deepens the horror of the Ideal Masters. Unlike Molag Bal or Mehrunes Dagon, the Ideal Masters were once mortals. According to ancient texts like the Battlespire lore, they were a group of incredibly powerful sorcerers from the Merethic era who achieved a form of transcendence. They didn't want to serve Daedra, they wanted to rival them. They shed their physical forms and created a pocket realm of oblivion fueled by the soul trade. This context makes the Soul Cairn even more terrifying. It wasn't created by a god's whim, it was built by human greed. It is a monument to the ultimate capitalist venture of the magical world, the buying and selling of eternal consciousness. As Serana and the Dragonborn push deeper into the wastes, aiming for the massive structure in the distance that resembles a shadowy version of the White Gold Tower, the sheer scale of the place becomes oppressive. The draw distance is hidden by purple fog, making the world feel infinite and claustrophobic at the same time. The path is often just a suggestion, leading to dead ends or sudden drops into the void. During this trek, the player encounters the lost souls of NPCs they may have killed previously. It's a grim Easter egg hunt. You might find a bandit you slew hours ago, wandering in a daze, mumbling about his lost loot. It forces a confrontation with the consequences of the hero's actions. Every time you cast a soul trap spell to recharge your enchanted sword, you are sending someone here. You are the supplier for the Ideal Masters. This realization leads to a massive fan theory and community debate, the fate of the Dragonborn. Since the Dragonborn has potentially pledged their soul to multiple Daedric princes, Nocturnal, Hircine, Hermaeus Mora, and now has given a piece to the Ideal Masters, who actually gets the soul when the Dragonborn dies. It is a theological nightmare. Some fans argue that Akatosh, being the father of the Dragonborn's soul, has primary custody and will claim it regardless of any deals made. Others argue that the Ideal Masters, having a literal piece of the soul, have a lien on the Dragonborn spirit. Walking through the Cairn with Serana, this debate feels less academic and more urgent. If the Dragonborn dies here, do they just stay? Does the weakened soul piece grow back? Or is that fragment lost forever to the crystals? Serana seems acutely aware of this sacrifice. She comments on the Dragonborn's pale appearance. The guilt is etched on her face. She asked you to come here, and now you are literally falling apart at the spiritual seams. The architecture of the Soul Cairn also deserves a mention. It is a mishmash of styles, primarily resembling ancient Nord or Nedic masonry, but twisted. It implies that the Ideal Masters simply copy-paste structures from the memories of the souls they consume. It's a realm of recycled assets, narratively speaking. There is no creativity here, only storage. This aligns with Serana's comments on the emptiness of the place. It is a warehouse. One of the few breaks in the monotony is the encounter with the soul of St. Jaeb, the Dunmer who drove the cliff racers from Morrowind. Seeing him here, writing his memoirs in a quiet corner of hell, adds a layer of tragic comedy. Even the greatest heroes can end up in the bin if they get soul-trapped during an ambush. It serves as a warning. Reputation doesn't matter here, only the soul gem matters. As the silhouette of the boneyard, the inner sanctum where Valerica is believed to be, grows larger, the resistance intensifies. The Keepers appear. These are powerful, towering undead guardians tasked by the Ideal Masters to ensure that Valerica never leaves. Killing them is a necessity to lower the barrier around the central arena. The combat in the Soul Cairn is frenetic. The lightning strikes from the sky can hit the player, the Keepers hit like trucks, and Serana is unleashing everything she has. Her necromancy is particularly ironic here. When she raises a dead boneman to fight for her, she's essentially re-enslaving a soul that is already enslaved. It's a meta layer of violation that the game glosses over, but which adds to the dark texture of her character. She uses the tools of the enemy to fight the enemy. Throughout this descent, Serana's dialogue becomes more introspective. She isn't making jokes about the weather anymore. She talks about her childhood, about how her mother used to describe the plains of Oblivion as theoretical places, not realities one had to walk through. The abstraction of magic is becoming the concrete reality of her trauma. She is walking through the very magic that ruined her family. The descent is not just physical, it is psychological. The Soul Cairn strips away the pretenses of the mortal world. There is no day or night, no hunger or thirst, only the relentless drain of the crystals. It wears you down. By the time the massive barrier of the boneyard comes into view, a wall of shimmering magical force that separates the wastes from Valerica's prison, the Dragonborn and Serana are exhausted. The purple light has seeped into their eyes. The constant thunder has rattled their bones. They stand before the entrance to the boneyard, the air humming with the power of the Ideal Masters. The journey through the wasteland is over, but the hardest part is just beginning. Somewhere inside that fortress of bone and shadow is the woman who started it all. Serana adjusts her armour, checks the Elder Scroll, which strangely doesn't glow as brightly here, perhaps dampened by the rival magic, and prepares herself. The Soul Cairn has taken its toll, a piece of the Dragonborn's soul and a piece of Serana's hope, but they have arrived. The detective story is about to turn into a family therapy session, and in the realm of the Ideal Masters, therapy usually involves a lot of shouting and summoned dragons. The barrier protecting the boneyard falls with a sound like shattering glass, echoing across the desolate plains of the Soul Cairn. It is a sound of finality. The Dragonborn and Serana have dismantled the prison security system, defeating the Keepers, those towering heavy metal album cover guardians, one by one. Now, the path to the inner sanctum is clear. The boneyard itself is exactly what it says on the tin. A massive, enclosed arena filled with the dusty remains of colossal, long-forgotten beasts. And in the centre of this grim colosseum, bent over an alchemy table as if she was simply preparing a light lunch, rather than enduring an eternal sentence, is Valerica. This moment is the emotional fulcrum of the entire DLC. We have spent hours wondering about Serana's mother. Was she a victim, a saviour, a monster? As we approach her, the visual answer is striking. Valerica looks almost exactly like Serana. They share the same character model features, the same glowing eyes, the same vampire royal armour. It's like looking at Serana through a lens of hardened cynicism. Where Serana carries herself with a curious, albeit guarded energy, Valerica is rigid. She is a statue of resentment brought to life. Her reaction to seeing her daughter after thousands of years is not a tearful embrace, it is a scolding. "Serana, what are you doing here?" she demands, her voice dripping with the tone of a parent whose child has just tracked mud onto a white carpet. "And who is this?" she gestures to the Dragonborn with palpable disgust. To Valerica, the Dragonborn is a variable she didn't account for, and Valerica hates variables. This interaction reveals a core in-game fact that often frustrates players. Valerica initially refuses to give up the Elder Scroll. Despite the fact that you just travelled through a portal to hell, paid a piece of your soul as a toll, and killed 3 demigod guardians to reach her, she calls you a fool. She assumes the Dragonborn is one of Harkon's spies, and that Serana has been duped. It takes a significant amount of dialogue, and Serana finally finding her voice to convince her otherwise. This argument is painful to watch because it is so incredibly human. Take away the vampires, the soul-eating crystals, and the apocalypse prophecy, and you have a classic toxic family dynamic. The mother thinks the daughter is incompetent and needs to be managed. The daughter is desperate for validation, but is only receiving criticism. Serana, usually so quick with a sarcastic quip, sounds small here. She pleads, "I'm not a little girl anymore, mother." It's a line delivered with a crack in the voice that hints at 4,000 years of suppressed frustration. Valerica's reluctance to hand over the scroll stems from her belief that stasis is victory. As long as the scroll is in the soul cairn, Harkon cannot win. She's content to rot in this purple wasteland for eternity if it means spiting her husband. It is a scorched earth, policy applied to her own existence. She would rather be the queen of a prison than a pawn in Harkon's court. However, the family reunion is rudely interrupted. The Ideal Masters, sensing that their prize prisoner might be checking out early, play their ace card. The sky above the boneyard darkens, if that's even possible in a place that is already perpetual twilight, and a dragon descends. This is Durnehviir. Durnehviir is not your average Skyrim dragon. His scales are rotting, his wings are tattered like old sails, and he drips with a slime that sizzles when it hits the ground. He is the jailer of the Soul Cairn, an undying guardian bound to the Ideal Masters. His entrance is spectacular, landing atop the central spire and roaring a challenge that summons a horde of bonemen to flood the arena. This fight introduces an obscure lore tidbit that gives Durnehviir a tragic depth. He wasn't always a zombie dragon. In the Merethic era, he was a powerful Dover who sought to expand his dominion through necromancy. He made a deal with the Ideal Masters. They would grant him the power to summon undead armies, and in exchange, he would guard Valerica until her death. The catch? Valerica is an immortal vampire. She will never die. The Ideal Masters tricked him into an eternal contract. Because he has been in the Soul Cairn for so long, his body has become attuned to it. If he were to leave the cairn for too long, he would simply perish. He is a prisoner just as much as Valerica is. The battle against Durnehviir is chaotic. The Dragonborn is dodging necrotic breath attacks, Serana is flinging ice spikes at the summoned skeletons, and Valerica actually helps. Seeing the 3 of them fight together, mother, daughter and Dragonborn, offers a glimpse of what House Vulkihar could have been if Harkon wasn't insane. They are a formidable triad. Valerica is a powerful mage, using high-level destruction spells that mirror Serana's, reinforcing the idea that Serana learned everything she knows from her mother, not her father. Once Durnehviir is defeated, his physical form shattering, though his soul reforms nearby because he cannot truly die here, the dust settles. Valerica is impressed. It's a begrudging respect, but it's there. She looks at the Dragonborn and finally admits, "Maybe you aren't a spy." She walks to the protective case in the centre of the arena and retrieves the Elder Scroll, Blood. Holding the scroll, the tension shifts from physical danger back to emotional warfare. Valerica hands it over, but not without a final barb. She warns Serana again about Harkon, but this time Serana pushes back. "I can handle him," she says. It's the moment Serana officially graduates from follower to protagonist. She's taking the weapon her mother hid and is choosing to use it rather than bury it. This scene fuels a significant fan theory regarding the cycle of abuse. Many fans argue that while Harkon is the overt abuser, violent, controlling, Valerica is the covert abuser, manipulative, dismissive. By keeping Serana in the dark and locking her away, Valerica treated Serana as an object. In the Boneyard, we see Serana breaking that cycle. She refuses to stay in the Soul Cairn with her mother. She refuses to hide. She chooses action. Some interpretations suggest that Serana's affection for the Dragonborn, platonic or otherwise, is so strong because the Dragonborn is the first person in her life to treat her as an agent of her own destiny, rather than a prophecy component. The tragedy of the Boneyard is that Valerica stays. Even after you defeat Durnehviir and secure the scroll, Valerica refuses to leave. She claims the risk is too great that she must remain hidden until Harkon is defeated. But there is a subtext of cowardice here. She has spent so long in her safe room that she is terrified of the open door. She tells Serana to go to finish it. It is a second abandonment. First, she locks Serana in a crypt. Now, she is sending her back to the wolves alone. As the Dragonborn and Serana turn to leave, Durnehviir reappears, but he doesn't attack. He speaks. This is one of the most poignant interactions in the game. He acknowledges the Dragonborn's strength, calling you Canarin or Vanquisher, and asks for a favour. He wants to see the sky of Tamriel again. He teaches you his shout, allowing you to summon him. It's a request born of pure, agonising nostalgia. Serana watches this exchange with empathy. She understands what it means to be trapped in the dark, longing for the sun. Durnehviir is a dark mirror of herself, a powerful being bound by a bad deal, yearning for freedom. Leaving the Boneyard feels heavier than entering it. You have the scroll, yes, you have a new dragon summon. But the emotional baggage is immense. Serana has confronted her mother and found her wanting. She realises that her parents are both deeply flawed, broken creatures. The pedestal she might have placed her mother on has crumbled into bone dust. As they walk back through the violet waste toward the portal, Serana is quiet. But it's a different kind of silence than before. It's the silence of resolve. She isn't looking for her parents' approval anymore. She has the Elder Scroll on her back, or the Dragonborn does effectively, and she has a mission. The secret of the Boneyard is that Serana realises she is effectively an orphan. Her father wants to kill her, and her mother is hiding in a hole. If she wants a future, she has to build it herself, starting with the destruction of the family legacy. The portal swirls ahead, a gateway back to the world of the living, the breathing, and the sun. Serana doesn't look back at the Boneyard. She doesn't look back at Valerica. She steps through the rift, ready to end the story that her parents started. The Soul Cairn, with its ideal masters and its silent storms, is left behind. A tomb for those who are too afraid to live. Emerging from the Soul Cairn with the blood scroll in hand, the Dragonborn and Serana return to the world of the living, lungs filling with air that doesn't taste like ozone and despair. They have the second piece of the puzzle. The third, the Sun Scroll, was recovered by the Dragonborn earlier, usually during the initial awakening of Serana, or stumbled upon in a Dwemer ruin, depending on how chaotic your playthrough is. The set is complete, the weapon is assembled, but we have a logistical failure. The operator is broken. Dexian Evicus, our designated reader, is finished. Whether you treated him well or poorly, the strain of the first reading, combined with the general stress of being kidnapped by vampires, has left him blind. He wears the bandage over his eyes not as a badge of office, but as a permanent scar. He cannot read the scrolls, he can only offer instructions. This puts the Dragonborn in a precarious position. The prophecy needs to be decoded, and the only person left with 20/20 vision and a willingness to risk their brain cells is the protagonist. This leads our duo to the ancestral glade. If the Soul Cairn was a visual representation of depression, the ancestral glade is a manifestation of hope. Hidden away in the mountains near Falkreath, it is one of the most stunningly designed interiors in the game. When you step through the cave entrance, the ceiling opens up into a massive natural dome. Sunlight, real, warm sunlight, streams down, illuminating pink blossoms, lush ferns, and a series of hot springs. The air is filled with yellow floating motes and the soft fluttering of thousands of wings. It is a sanctuary, but we aren't here for a picnic. We are here to perform the ritual of the ancestor moth. The core in-game fact here is the mechanics of the ritual itself. You cannot simply open the Elder Scroll and read it. That would fry your mind instantly. You need a buffer. You need the moths. To attract them, the Dragonborn must use a specific tool, a draw knife. This isn't a weapon. It's a ceremonial harvesting tool used to scrape the bark of the canticle trees. These trees are unique to the glade. They look like twisted cherry blossoms, radiating a faint magical aura. The process is tactile and rhythmic. The Dragonborn walks to a tree, the draw knife scrapes the bark, shh, and a cloud of pinkish gold sap and pheromones is released. It's sticky, sweet-smelling, and irresistible to the moths. As you move from tree to tree, collecting the bark essence, the moths begin to follow you. First a few, then a dozen, then a swarm. Serana watches this from a distance, and this distance is significant. She doesn't help you scrape the bark. She doesn't try to attract the moths. In fact, if you pay attention to the AI behavior here, she tends to stay on the stone paths, away from the vegetation. This isn't just because she's lazy, it's because she is repelled. The ancestor moths are creatures of pure life energy. They are attracted to the song of the living. Serana, being a daughter of Coldharbor, is a void in that song. She is static. To the moths, she probably feels like a cold draft in a warm room. She can't do this ritual. The moths wouldn't land on her. They would likely wither or scatter. This reinforces her dependency on the Dragonborn. For all her power, her vampire lord form, her ancient blood magic, she is biologically locked out of this celestial connection. She needs a mortal to be the bridge. It's a humbling moment for a character who usually exudes superiority. She crosses her arms, watching you run around covered in bugs, and likely makes a quip about how ridiculous you look. "I hope you know what you're doing," she says, but the concern in her voice is genuine. She knows the cost Dexion paid. She's watching you prepare to stick your hand in the same fire. The visual of the fully completed ritual is breathtaking. The Dragonborn stands in the centre of the greatest shaft of sunlight, completely enveloped by a tornado of glowing golden moths. The sound is a dull, hypnotic roar of fluttering wings. The screen blurs at the edges, simulating the altered state of consciousness required to perceive the scroll. The moths act as a lens, filtering the raw, chaotic information of the Elder Scroll into something the mortal brain can comprehend. They turn the blinding light into a readable map. This brings us to an obscure lore tidbit about the song of the ancestor moths. In the lore, specifically from books like Pension of the Ancestor Moth, it is explained that the moths produce a sound that is usually inaudible to normal ears. This sound, or hymn, possesses unique tonal frequency that resonates with the fabric of the Elder Scrolls. The scrolls are often described as fragments of creation, and in the Elder Scrolls metaphysics, creation is often linked to sound and music, tonal architecture. The moths are essentially singing the same song as the universe. By surrounding yourself with them, you are tuning your brain to the frequency of the scroll. You are hacking the cosmic radio signal. But why does the Dragonborn survive this? Dexion went blind after reading one scroll. The Dragonborn reads 3 of them in succession: Sun, Blood, and Dragon, inside the glade. This discrepancy has fueled a massive community debate and fan theory for years. Is it just main character syndrome, plot armor, or is there a lore reason? The prevailing theory is that the Dragonborn's soul, being that of a dragon, a shard of Akatosh, provides the immunity. Akatosh is the dragon god of time. The Elder Scrolls are artifacts of time, recording past, present, and future simultaneously. Dexion, a mortal, was trying to read the flow of time with a mortal mind. The Dragonborn, however, is a creature of time. When the Dragonborn reads the scroll, it's not a mortal looking at a god, it's a piece of the time god looking at itself. The resonance is compatible. The moths help, certainly, but the Dragonborn's soul is the true shield. This theory adds a layer of destiny to the scene. Serana isn't just watching a hero, she is watching a demigod commune with their heritage. It recontextualizes the power dynamic. Serana is ancient, but the Dragonborn is eternal. As the Dragonborn unfurls the scroll in the center of the moth swarm, the symbols align. The map of Skyrim flashes in the mind's eye, zooming in on a specific remote location in the Reach, Darkfall Cave. The vision is sharp, clear and undeniable. Then the light fades. The moths disperse, returning to the canopy. The Dragonborn blinks, shaking off the cosmic vertigo. Serana rushes forward. This is one of the few times she breaks her personal space rule aggressively. She steps right up to you. "Are you all right?" she asks. She leans in, looking at your eyes, checking for the milky whiteness that claimed Dexian's sight. When she realizes you can still see, her relief is palpable. She lets out a breath she doesn't need. "I was worried there for a moment," she admits. "This interaction is pivotal for the romance arc that isn't really a romance. It's intimacy forged in trauma. She just watched you risk permanent disability to help her deal with her daddy issues. It cements her loyalty. From this point on, she isn't following you because she has nowhere else to go. She is following you because she trusts you with her life." The revelation of Darkfall Cave is grim news, however. Serana knows of it, or at least the legends. It is a place of darkness, located in the Forgotten Vale, an area that hasn't been mapped or settled in eras. It is the domain of the ancient snow elves, the Falmer, before their corruption. The arrow on the compass has stopped spinning and locked onto a target. Before they leave the glade, there is a quiet moment of contrast. The Dragonborn stands amidst the flowers and the sunlight, the lingering magic of the moths still humming in the air. Serana stands in the shade of a rock overhang, hood up. The ancestral glade is a celebration of life, light, and ancestry, everything a vampire is not. It highlights the tragedy of her existence. She is cut off from the natural beauty of the world. She can observe it, she can walk through it, but she cannot be part of it. The moths rejected her. The sun burns her. She is an observer of paradise, never a resident. The secret of the ancestral glade is not just the location of the next dungeon, it is the confirmation of Serana's isolation. She needs the Dragonborn not just for their sword, but for their soul. She needs someone who can walk in the light to lead her through the dark. The Dragonborn is her proxy for living. "Darkfall Cave," she muses, her voice returning to that pragmatic, slightly weary tone. "Sounds inviting." It's a defense mechanism. She jokes to keep the weight of the prophecy at bay. They have the map. They know where Oriel's bow is hidden. The scavenger hunt is over. The crusade is beginning. As they exit the cave, leaving the golden light of the moths behind for the grey skies of Skyrim, the mood shifts. The detective work is done. They know the who, the why, and the where. Now comes the violence. They are heading to the heart of the Snow Elf territory to find a weapon of a god. And Serana, having seen the Dragonborn withstand the raw power of the Elder Scroll, looks at her companion with a new kind of respect. She isn't the only powerful monster in the party anymore. From the warm, golden embrace of the ancestral glade, the journey takes a sharp, freezing turn into the abyss. Following the map revealed by the Elder Scroll, the Dragonborn and Serana descend into Darkfall Cave, which acts as a terrifying waterslide into the forgotten history of Skyrim. After navigating a bridge that collapses, because apparently ancient architects never accounted for metal fatigue, the duo is flushed into a subterranean river and washed up on the shores of a lost world, the Forgotten Vale. This location is a visual masterpiece, a hidden pocket of the Merethic era preserved in ice. It is a glacial basin surrounded by jagged peaks that have shielded it from the eyes of Nords and Imperials for thousands of years. Here the architecture is delicate, white and elven, starkly different from the heavy stone cairns of the surface. It is the last sanctuary of the Snow Elves, the Falmer, before their tragic descent into blindness and madness. But we aren't here for sightseeing. We're here for Oriel's bow, the weapon of the sun god himself. Standing in our way is the tragic figure of Arch-Curate Vyrthur. To reach him, we first encounter his brother, Knight Paladin Gelebor. Gelebor is a shock to the system, a pristine, non-monstrous snow elf. He looks like what the Falmer should be, tall, pale, regal and articulate. He guards the way shrines, waiting for pilgrims who haven't come in centuries. He points us toward the inner sanctum, claiming that his brother, Vyrthur, has been taken or corrupted by the betrayed, the twisted Falmer we all know and loathe. Gelebor believes his brother is a victim under siege. He is half right. The trek to the inner sanctum is a gauntlet. The Dragonborn and Serana fight through hordes of Falmer who seem more organised, more militaristic here than in the caves of Skyrim. Serana is particularly quiet during this ascent. The Vale is hauntingly beautiful, but it is a graveyard of a civilization. She, a relic of an ancient era, is walking through the ruins of an even older one. The parallels are starting to mount. She sees the corruption of the Falmer, a people twisted by betrayal and darkness, and she likely sees a reflection of her own family's fall from grace. When they finally breach the inner sanctum, a breathtaking cathedral of ice and magic, they find Vyrthur sitting on his throne on a balcony overlooking the Vale. But the siege Gelabor spoke of is a lie. The frozen Falmer standing around aren't attacking Vyrthur, they are guarding him. This leads to the core in-game fact that flips the script on the entire DLC. As the Dragonborn approaches, Vyrthur unleashes a wave of magical energy that knocks them back. During the ensuing monologue, the truth comes out. Vyrthur isn't being held captive by the betrayed, he controls them. And the reason he has survived for thousands of years, long past the natural lifespan of an elf, becomes clear when Serana shouts the accusation, he's a vampire. The shock on Serana's face is mirrored by the player. Vyrthur, the highest priest of the sun god Auriel, is a creature of the night. He reveals that one of his own initiates infected him millennia ago. When he turned to Auriel for a cure, praying for salvation, the god remained silent. Auriel turned his back on his priest. This is where the tragedy of Vyrthur becomes a dark mirror to the tragedy of Serana. Both were high-born nobles, one a priest, one a princess. Both were afflicted with vampirism against their initial will, Vyrthur by an initiate, Serana by her parents' decree. Both felt abandoned by the figures who were supposed to protect them. For Serana, it was her father and mother. For Vyrthur, it was his god. But their reactions to this trauma are diametrically opposed. Serana withdrew. She went into stasis, hiding from the world, and now seeks to stop the madness. Vyrthur, however, chose active, cosmic revenge. This brings us to the secret of the prophecy. Vyrthur reveals that he wrote the Tyranny of the Sun prophecy. It wasn't some ancient decree from the dawn of time. It was a revenge fantasy penned by a disgruntled elf. He couldn't kill a god, so he decided to kill the god's influence on the world. He wanted to blot out the sun to spit in Auriel's face. He crafted the prophecy to lure a Daughter of Coldharbour to him, because he needed her blood to corrupt the bow. The look Serana gives Vyrthur when this is revealed is a mix of horror and absolute fury. For thousands of years, her life has been defined by this prophecy. Her family was destroyed by it. Her father lost his mind over it. Her mother locked her in a box because of it. And now she learns that the entire thing was a setup, engineered by a tantrum-throwing priest who got ghosted by his deity. Her suffering wasn't destiny. It was collateral damage in someone else's vendetta. There is an obscure lore tidbit found in the Book of the Dragonborn, and other theological texts about the nature of Auriel. Auriel is the elven aspect of Akatosh, the time god. He is associated with the sun and the flow of time. Vampires, being undead, exist outside the natural cycle of life and death. They are essentially static points in a flowing river. By becoming a vampire, Vyrthur was removed from Auriel's sphere. The god didn't turn his back out of malice. Vyrthur simply ceased to exist on the frequency that Auriel broadcasts on. Vyrthur's inability to understand this theological nuance led to his madness. He took a metaphysical incompatibility and interpreted it as a personal insult. The battle that follows is chaotic. Vyrthur is a powerful mage, using ice magic and summoning ancient frost atronachs. He collapses the ceiling of the sanctum, bringing huge chunks of masonry crashing down. Serana fights with a level of aggression we haven't seen before. She isn't just fighting an enemy, she's fighting the author of her pain. Every ice spike she throws is personal. She is dismantling the architect of her misery. This encounter fuels a compelling community debate. Who is the true villain of the Dawnguard DLC? Harkon is the poster boy, certainly. He is the one trying to execute the plan, but Vyrthur is the one who created the plan. Without Vyrthur, Harkon would just be a generic vampire lord sitting in a castle. Vyrthur provided the roadmap. Some fans argue that Vyrthur is the more tragic figure because his motivation is rooted in a profound spiritual betrayal, whereas Harkon is motivated by simple greed and domination. Vyrthur wanted to hurt God. Harkon just wanted to rule the neighbourhood. However, Serana doesn't care about the nuance of his tragedy. She sees a monster who used her existence as a battery for his hate machine. When Vyrthur is finally defeated, broken on the balcony of his own temple, there is no moment of forgiveness. He dies cursing Auriel. Serana's reaction to his death is quiet and chilling. She stands over his body looking at the creature who effectively ruined her life from the shadows of history. I felt sorry for him, she might say, depending on your dialogue choices, but the sentiment is fleeting. Mostly she feels validation. The mystery is solved. The prophecy is a lie constructed by a madman. But this revelation cuts both ways. If the prophecy is a lie, then Harkon is chasing a phantom. But the mechanic of the prophecy, using the blood on the bow, is real. Vyrthur figured out the magic. He just dressed it up in apocalyptic language. This means Harkon can still succeed. The danger hasn't passed just because the author is dead. We also have to acknowledge the setting. The balcony of the inner sanctum offers a panoramic view of Skyrim. It is high up, the air thin and cold. It represents the pinnacle of the Snow Elves' achievement, now stained by vampire blood. Gelebor steps out, witnessing the death of his brother. Serana watches this interplay between the brothers. Gelebor is grieving, but he accepts the necessity of it. He thanks the Dragonborn. Serana sees a functional sibling relationship here, even in its tragic end. Gelebor tried to save Vyrthur. He didn't exploit him. It's another sharp contrast to her own family. The retrieval of Auriel's bow is the climax of this section. The Dragonborn takes the weapon from the shrine. It is a beautiful, intricate artifact glowing with the light of the sun. It feels light in the hand, humming with holy energy. It is the antithesis of the Elder Scroll. One is a heavy burden of knowledge, the other is a lightweight instrument of action. With the bow in hand, the power dynamic shifts completely. They have the weapon, they have the knowledge, and Serana has the blood. The board is set for the final game, but the encounter with Vyrthur has changed Serana. She realizes that destiny is often just the will of bitter old men scribbled onto parchment. She is done being a character in Vyrthur's story. She is done being a character in Harkon's story. As they begin the descent from the inner sanctum, leaving the frozen body of the Arch-Curate to the elements, Serana looks at the bow. "We have what we need," she says. Her voice is steel. There is no more searching, no more confusion. The only thing left to do is go home and confront the last author standing. Harkon is waiting, and thanks to Vyrthur, Serana now knows exactly how to break his heart, literally and metaphorically. The tragedy of the Snow Elves fades into the background as the reality of the present takes over. Vyrthur was a ghost of the past. Harkon is the monster of the present, and Serana is the force of the future. The Forgotten Vale, with its silent glaciers and blinded farmer, will be left to its secrets. The Dragonborn and the Vampire Princess are bringing the sun back to Castle Vulkihar. The return to Castle Vulkihar is not a journey of stealth or exploration. It is a march of execution. With Auriel's bow strapped to the Dragonborn's back and the truth of the prophecy exposed as the ravings of a lunatic elf, the atmosphere shifts from mystery to inevitability. The fog surrounding the castle seems thicker, the gargoyles more menacing, but Serana walks with a stride that is entirely new. She isn't the confused girl from the crypt, nor the hesitant daughter from the courtyard. She is the executioner coming home to swing the axe. There is a profound silence as the duo crosses the stone bridge. The skeleton sentries do not attack, perhaps sensing the pure-blooded authority radiating from Serana, or perhaps simply waiting for the master's command. We walk straight through the great hall, ignoring the lesser vampires who scatter like roaches when the lights turn on. The destination is the cathedral, the inner sanctum where Lord Harkon spends his days plotting the end of the sun. When the heavy doors to the cathedral swing open, we are greeted by a scene that is essentially a shrine to narcissism. The room is dominated by a massive shrine to Molag Bal, bathed in a red, sick light. In the centre stands a font of blood, and waiting there, like a spider in the centre of a very expensive web, is Lord Harkon. He is already in his vampire lord form, or on the verge of it, dripping with arrogance. He doesn't look fearfully at the intruders. He looks expectantly at the bow. "You have done well," he purrs, assuming that despite everything his daughter has returned to serve him. This brings us to the core in-game fact of the final confrontation. Harkon offers the Dragonborn one last chance to surrender the bow. He genuinely believes that the allure of power is universal. He cannot conceive of a world where someone would choose loyalty or morality over the ability to blot out the sun. Serana's intervention here is the emotional climax of her entire existence. She steps between the Dragonborn and her father. "No, father, we're not giving you the bow." Her voice is steady, But if you listen closely to the performance, there is a tremor of heartbreak. She isn't just refusing a command, she is acknowledging that her father is dead. The thing standing in front of her is just a husk powered by ambition. Harkon's reaction is textbook abuser logic. He doesn't get angry immediately, he gets dismissive. He tells Serana she is confused, that she has been corrupted by the mortal. He tries to gaslight her one last time. "I have sacrificed everything for this family," he roars. Serana's retort is one of the best lines in the DLC. "You sacrificed us. You sacrificed everything that made us a family." This exchange highlights the tragedy of the Vulkihar clan. Harkon believes the family is the name, the castle, and the power. Serana realizes the family was the people. By sacrificing the people to secure the power, Harkon destroyed the very thing he claims to be protecting. It is a fundamental philosophical disconnect that can only be resolved with violence. The battle that ensues is not just a boss fight, it is a chaotic, magical brawl. Harkon transforms fully into the Vampire Lord, a grotesque, bat-like monstrosity that hovers above the ground. He teleports, shoots balls of drain-life energy, and summons gargoyles. But notice Serana's behaviour. In standard gameplay, followers often hang back or get stuck on geometry during boss fights. In this battle, Serana is aggressive. She matches him spell for spell. She flings ice spikes, raises undead minions, and drains his life. She is using the very power he gave her to tear him apart. There is an obscure lore tidbit hidden in the mechanics of this fight involving the shrine of Molag Bal in the room. During the battle, Harkon will occasionally retreat to the shrine, encasing himself in a red sphere of invulnerability to regenerate his health. This isn't just a shield phase. Lore-wise, he is directly siphoning energy from Coldharbor. The shrine acts as a conduit to Molag Bal's realm. Harkon is literally plugging himself into the battery of the god of domination to stay alive. To break this shield, the Dragonborn must use Auriel's bow, a weapon of the sun god, Akatosh, Auriel, to blast the shrine. It is a direct clash of divine energies, the sun breaking the domination of the dark. Serana is witnessing a theological war played out in her living room. The pacing of the fight is frantic. Harkon screams betrayals. "You are nothing to me," he shouts at Serana. "I should have killed you in the crypt." These words cut deeper than his claws ever could. Every insult strips away the last lingering doubts Serana might have had. She isn't killing her father anymore. She's putting down a rabid animal that wears her father's face. This leads to a prevalent fan theory and community debate. Could Harkon have been redeemed? Many players have looked for a Speech 100 option to talk him down, to convince him that Vyrthur lied, or that the family could be reunited, but the game offers no such path. Fans argue this is because Harkon lost his soul the moment he pledged himself to Molag Bal. In the Elder Scrolls lore, pure-blooded vampires who undergo the rite of the Scion are often viewed as having their souls totally claimed by the prince. There is no humanity left to appeal to. He is an extension of Bal's will. Serana, strangely, seems to be the exception, perhaps because she was locked away, preventing the corruption from rotting her mind as fully as it did his, or perhaps her difference is simply her strength of will. As the fight reaches its conclusion, Harkon weakens. The invulnerability shields shatter under the barrage of sun-hallowed arrows. He falls to the ground, reverting to his humanoid form, panting, bleeding. He crawls toward the shrine, desperate for one last drop of power, but the connection is severed. The final blow is often struck by the Dragonborn, but narratively it is a joint execution. Harkon looks up, his eyes fading. "No, not like this," he gasps. Then, in a gruesome display of necromantic physics, his body dissolves. He doesn't leave a corpse. He explodes into a pile of red, glowing ash and goo. This red ash death is unique to high-level vampires in the game, but for Harkon it feels symbolic. He consumed so much blood, devoured so much life, that in the end that's all he is, a pile of sticky red residue. There is no body to bury, no face to close the eyes of, he is just waste. The silence that follows the death of a major boss is usually triumphant. The music swells, the quest updates. But here, the silence is heavy. Serana stands over the pile of red ash. She doesn't cheer. She doesn't sheathe her weapon immediately. She just stares. "Is it over?" she asks. Her voice is small again. The adrenaline is fading. replaced by the crushing reality of patricide. In a world like Skyrim, where death is cheap, killing your own father is still a profound taboo. It leaves a mark on the soul that no amount of restoration magic can heal. Serana's reaction is complex. She expresses relief, yes. The threat is gone. The sun is safe. The tyranny is ended. But she also expresses a deep, mournful pity. He was a good father once, she murmurs, before the obsession. This acknowledges that the monster they just killed was once a man who told her bedtime stories and taught her magic. She's grieving the man who died 4,000 years ago, not the monster who died 5 seconds ago. The secret of this section is that Serana's strength comes from her ability to separate the two. She loved her father enough to kill the thing that replaced him. It is an act of mercy as much as it is an act of survival. If she had let him live, he would have continued to degrade, to become more monstrous, more enslaved by Molag Bal. By ending him, she freed him from his own madness. The Dragonborn stands back, giving her space. There is nothing to say. Good job feels inappropriate. I'm sorry feels hollow. So you wait. You let her process the pile of ash that used to be the lord of the castle. Eventually she takes a deep breath. She turns away from the shrine. The red light of the room seems to dim, the oppressive presence of Molag Bal retreating now that his champion is destroyed. Serana looks at the Dragonborn, and the look is one of absolute exhaustion. She's 4,000 years old, and she has just had the longest week of her life. Come on, she says, her voice regaining some of its usual pragmatic edge. Let's get out of here. This place, it stinks of him. They leave the cathedral, leaving the pile of ash on the floor. It's a messy end to a messy family history. But as they walk back into the Great Hall, the castle feels different. It is empty of the master's malice. It is just a pile of stone now. And Serana, for the first time in millennia, is truly, terrifyingly free. The prophecy is broken. The parents are gone, one dead, one trapped. The board is clear, but the story isn't quite over. There are loose ends. There is a mother still waiting in purgatory. And there is the question of what a vampire princess does when she no longer has a kingdom to fight for or against. As the adrenaline of the boss fight fades, the existential dread sets in. What now? With the lord of the castle reduced to a pile of red sludge and the tyranny of the sun officially cancelled, you might expect Serana to hang up her cloak, retire to a nice crypt in solitude, and spend the rest of her immortality reading books. But that isn't what happens. If you choose to keep her as a follower, and let's be honest, almost everyone does, she remains by your side, transitioning from a quest-essential NPC to a permanent road companion. It is in this post-quest clarity that we can truly appreciate and occasionally scream at her prowess as a master of necromancy and cryomancy. Now that we aren't rushing to save the world, we can take a moment to analyse exactly how Serana fights. It is a spectacle of chaos. Unlike the standard housecarls who charge in with a sword and shield, acting as simple anvils for the enemy to hammer against, Serana is a hurricane of magical aggression. She is a spell sword in the truest sense, though her preference leans heavily toward the spell side of the equation. Let's start with the ice. If you travel with Serana, your auditory landscape is going to be dominated by the sharp, cracking sound of the Ice Spike spell. It is her bread and butter. It is her handshake. It is her answer to every question, including, is that a bandit? And, is that a harmless mud crab? Serana dual casts destruction magic with a speed and ferocity that puts the College of Winterhold to shame. She flings jagged shards of ice that travel at high velocity, impaling enemies with a satisfying thwack. Visually, this leads to some hilarious and gruesome moments. You might turn around after a skirmish to see a bandit chief looking like a pincushion, with 3 feet of ice protruding from his forehead, yet somehow still trying to monologue. But there is a core in-game fact that every Serana user knows deep in their bones. She loves Area of Effect, AoE, spells, specifically Ice Storm. This spell sends a swirling vortex of freezing wind moving slowly across the battlefield. It is devastating to enemies. Unfortunately, it is also devastating to you, your horse, the town guard, and the random chicken caught in the crossfire. Serana has absolutely no concept of friendly fire. If a Draugr is standing behind you, she will happily blast through you to hit it. This makes fighting alongside her a dance of survival. You aren't just dodging the enemy's attacks, you're dodging your own partner's artillery. However, where Serana truly earns her reputation, both as a powerhouse and a nuisance, is her necromancy. Serana is a necromancer of the highest order. Her AI is programmed to constantly assess the battlefield for available corpses, and she will reanimate them almost immediately. This behaviour leads to the infamous ash pile phenomenon. When a reanimated corpse is killed a second time, or the spell wears off, it doesn't just fall down, it disintegrates into a pile of grey ash. This is a permanent change to the world, state. This sparks a massive, long-running community debate regarding save bloat and aesthetic ruin. In the original versions of Skyrim, and still present in some unpatched versions, these ash piles were permanent. They never despawned. This meant that if you took Serana on a long adventure through Whiterun, you would leave a trail of little grey heaps everywhere you went. Players complained bitterly that Serana was turning their beautiful, pristine Skyrim into a giant ashtray. It became a technical issue where save files would grow to unmanageable sizes because the game had to track thousands of ash piles that Serana had created from wolves, bandits, and bunnies. Yes, bunnies. Serana's necromancy target selection is famously indiscriminate. While she can raise a powerful bandit marauder to turn the tide of battle, she's just as likely to resurrect a rabbit, a goat, or a chicken. There is nothing quite as surreal as fighting an ancient dragon, looking for backup and seeing Serana charge into battle flanked by a glowing undead goat. It highlights a chaotic neutral element to her AI. She uses what is available. She doesn't shop for quality, she shops for proximity. To Serana, a body is a tool, regardless of whether that body once clucked or shouted. Despite the hilarity of the zombie chicken, her necromancy is actually quite potent due to an obscure lore tidbit regarding her specific spell scaling. Serana uses a unique version of the reanimate corpse spell that scales with her level. Most followers are capped, or use fixed level spells. Serana, however, can level indefinitely with the player in later patches and special editions, meaning her necromancy remains viable into the late game. Furthermore, she possesses a unique vampiric drain spell that is distinct from the one the player learns. The player's vampiric drain is often criticised for being weak at high levels. Serana's version, however, drains health, magicka, and stamina simultaneously. It is a tri-stat drain. This makes her incredibly durable. She's constantly replenishing her own resources while starving the enemy. If you watch her closely, you'll see the red stream of magic connecting her to her target. She's literally drinking their soul in real time to fuel her next ice spike. It's a terrifyingly efficient loop of resource management. This brings us to the visual storytelling of her combat style. Serana moves with a fluidity that other NPCs lack. When enemies get too close, she will pull out a melee weapon, usually an elven or daedric dagger if you give her one, and engage in close quarters. She does a spin attack animation that is rare among followers. It suggests a level of martial training that goes beyond simple spellcasting. Remember, she is royalty. She was likely trained by the best weapon masters of the First Era before she was locked away. She isn't a squishy wizard. She is a warrior princess who just happens to be dead, but her power also hints at a darker fan theory. Why doesn't she use the Vampire Lord form? We know she has the blood. We saw Harkon use it. We know the Dragonborn can use it. Yet Serana remains in her humanoid form, even in life or death situations. Some fans argue this is a gameplay limitation. Having a follower turn into a giant floating monster would clog up corridors even worse than she already does. However, the narrative theory is more compelling. It suggests that Serana refuses to use the Vampire Lord form because it represents the ultimate submission to Molag Bal. The form is the gift her father cherished. It is the physical manifestation of the monster inside. By staying human-ish, Serana is exercising control. She uses the magic, necromancy ice, because it is a tool, but she rejects the transformation because it is an identity. She fights as Serana, not as a daughter of Coldharbor. It is a deliberate handicap she places on herself to maintain her sense of self. There is also the matter of her sneak mechanics. Serana is one of the few followers who will actively sneak with you, but her sneak is often loud. She has a tendency to complain, "Who's there?" or "I knew I heard something," while you're trying to be stealthy. Her combat AI is aggressive, meaning she often breaks stealth the moment an enemy is detected, ruining your carefully planned backstab. This reinforces her personality. She is tired of hiding. She spent thousands of years in a box. She has no patience for creeping around in the shadows anymore. If there is a fight, she wants to finish it. Another interesting quirk is her interaction with turn undead spells. Since she is undead, if the Dragonborn, or a chaotic scroll explosion, uses a massive AoE healing or anti-undead spell, Serana can be affected. She will glow, maybe flee, or take damage. It's a constant reminder of her nature. You can't just heal your party blindly. You have to remember that your healer is allergic to your healing spell, unless it's heal undead. It adds a layer of tactical complexity to the relationship. Let's look at the resurrect voice lines. When she raises a zombie, she often shouts, "Where do you think you're going?" or "Done and done." There is a casualness to it. She doesn't chant ancient liturgies. She snaps her fingers and commands the dead to get up. It speaks to how normalized necromancy is for her. To a normal person, raising the dead is a blasphemy against Archay. To Serana, it's recycling, it's practical, it's eco-friendly warfare. But this mastery over death creates a dissonance when you're just walking around town. You are the Dragonborn, hero of the people, walking into the bannered mare in Whiterun. Behind you walks a woman with glowing eyes who just turned 3 bandits into ash piles outside the city gates. The townspeople comment on her. That's quite a companion you have there, but they don't attack. This acceptance, or fear she generates, is palpable. She is a walking weapon of mass destruction that has been pointed at the bad guys, but she's still a weapon. As we analyse her combat prowess, we have to admit that she is, pound for pound, the strongest follower in the game, excluding perhaps level uncapped J'zargo or modded companions. She is essential, cannot die, aggressive, has ranged and melee options, and summons her own meat shields. She is a one-woman army. And yet, despite all this power, the ability to freeze blood, raise the dead and drain life, there is a weariness to her violence. After the combat music fades, she sheathes her weapon with a sigh. "Let's move on," she says. She's good at killing because she has had to be. It is a survival mechanism, not a passion. Harkon revelled in the power. Serana uses it to clear the road. This distinction is crucial. Harkon wanted to be the lord of vampires. Serana just wants to be left alone. Her mastery of necromancy and ice serves that goal. She freezes the world to keep it at a distance. She raises the dead so she doesn't have to fight alone. Her combat style is a reflection of her psychology, defensive, isolating, and deeply distrustful of letting anyone get too close, except perhaps the Dragonborn. So, the next time she puts an ice spike through the back of your head while trying to hit a skeever, don't get mad. Just remember that you are travelling with a magical prodigy who's trying her best to protect you, even if her aim is a little enthusiastic. She is the queen of ice, the mistress of ash, and the only person in Skyrim who thinks a resurrected chicken is a viable tactical asset. And honestly, we wouldn't have her any other way. The dust has settled in Castle Vulkihar. The tyranny of the sun remains a failed prophecy, and the world continues to spin. Most players at this point are content to keep Serana as their permanent, overpowered undead sidekick. She is, after all, the most capable follower in the game. But for those who have paid close attention, those who treated the dialogue wheel not as a means to get to the next objective, but as a conversation, there is one final secret left to uncover. It is the rarest outcome in the entire DLC, hidden behind invisible affection counters and specific dialogue triggers. We are talking about the cure. This is not a quest marker you can simply toggle on. It is an organic development that relies entirely on how you have treated Serana up to this point. If you treated her like a monster, asking her constantly about her condition with judgment, or if you pushed her too hard about the cure before Harkon was defeated, she will shut you down. She will tell you that she is comfortable in her skin, and that her vampirism is a part of who she is. And that will be the end of it. She will remain a daughter of Coldharbor forever. However, if you have been patient, if you asked her about her feelings in the ancestral glade, if you supported her through the trauma of killing her father without being pushy, then, and only then, does a new dialogue option open up in the post-game quiet. Have you ever thought about being cured? It's a simple question, but in the context of Elder Scrolls lore it is monumental. We are asking a pure-blooded vampire, a being directly touched by a Daedric prince, to renounce her immortality and her power. We are asking her to become mortal, frail, and subject to the ticking clock of time. This brings us to a core in-game fact regarding the mechanics of this choice. If you navigate the conversation correctly, essentially acting as a supportive friend rather than a judgmental priest, Serana will admit that she has thought about it. She mentions that with her father gone and her mother, well, occupied, the gift of vampirism feels less like a heritage and more like a scar. She tells you that she needs to go away for a while to see Falion. Falion is the wizard in Morthal, the only known NPC in Skyrim capable of curing vampirism through a ritual involving a black soul gem. Serana knows of him, likely through her modern education while travelling with you, or perhaps through old knowledge. She tells you she has to do this alone. She leaves the party. For the first time since Dimhollow Crypt, the Dragonborn is truly alone. Serana walks out the door, not as a follower, but as a pilgrim. The waiting period, usually about 3 to 5 in-game days, is a strange time for the player. You might go build a house, kill a dragon, or just wait in Whiterun. But there is a genuine anxiety. Will she come back? Did the ritual work? When she finally returns to Fort Dawnguard, or the castle, though she usually defaults to the fort if cured, the visual change is shocking. Gone are the glowing orange-yellow eyes that marked her as a predator. In their place are human eyes, soft, green, and undeniably mortal. It is one of the most subtle yet impactful visual changes in the game. The predator is gone, the girl remains. This transformation leads to an obscure lore tidbit regarding the metaphysics of the cure. How does one cure a Daughter of Coldharbour? A standard vampire is just someone with a disease, sanguinar vampiris. Curing them is like curing a flu, albeit a magical one. But Serana wasn't diseased, she was changed by Molag Bal. To cure her requires more than just scrubbing a virus. It requires a fundamental rewriting of her animus, soul. Falion's ritual involves offering a black soul gem, a soul for a soul, to the ideal masters or Oblivion, in exchange for the life being restored. This implies that to save Serana's humanity, someone else's soul had to pay the price. It's a dark exchange, fitting for her story. She doesn't get a free redemption. She buys her mortality with the currency of the world she's leaving behind. But why does she do it? This is the heart of the matter. Serana is powerful. She is immortal. Why trade that for wrinkles, old age, and eventual death? The answer lies in her rejection of her father's legacy. Harkon's entire worldview is based on the accumulation of power and the fear of death. He sacrificed his family to live forever. By choosing mortality, Serana is making the ultimate anti-Harkon statement. She's saying that a finite life lived on her own terms is infinitely more valuable than an eternal life lived as a monster. She is choosing the vulnerability of being human because that vulnerability allows her to feel something other than the cold hunger of Coldharbor. However, this choice is not without its gameplay consequences, which fuels a massive community debate. From a min-max perspective, curing Serana is a nerf. When she's human, she can no longer use her Blood Curse ability to create blood-cursed elven arrows for Oriel's bow. She can still treat sun-hallowed arrows, but the ability to block out the sun is gone forever, unless you find another vampire. Furthermore, some players report that her combat aggression drops slightly, or that she becomes softer. She loses the undead tag, meaning healing spells work on her, but necromancy buffs do not. Many players refuse to cure her for this reason. They want the best follower, but there is also a deeper, more philosophical argument against the cure within the fan community. Some argue that Serana's vampirism makes her unique, and that by curing her, you're stripping away her identity to make her normal. They argue that true acceptance would be loving her as a vampire, not asking her to change. Conversely, the pro-cure camp argues that her vampirism was never her choice. It was forced upon her by rape and ritual. It is a symbol of her trauma. Curing her is the only way to give her true agency. It is the final step in her healing process. She isn't losing her identity. She is reclaiming the one that was stolen from her 4,000 years ago. There is also a poignant tragedy to her cure. If the Dragonborn is a vampire or an elf with a long lifespan, Serana has essentially put herself on a countdown. She will age, she will die. the Dragonborn will go on. By curing herself, she's ensuring that their partnership has an expiration date. It adds a bittersweet layer to their relationship. She would rather have 50 good years with you as a human than eternity as a statue. Once cured, her dialogue shifts slightly. She comments on how the world looks brighter. She mentions that she feels lighter, like a weight has been lifted. The sun that she spent the entire DLC trying to protect is now something she can actually feel on her face. Imagine that sensation. For thousands of years, the sun was a painful, burning enemy. Now it is warmth. It is life. Watching a cured Serana sandbox in the daylight is a victory lap. When she sits on a bench in solitude, basking in the light, she isn't hiding under her hood anymore. She is present. She's part of the world of Archay, the cycle of life and death. She has re-entered the stream of time that her father tried so hard to step out of. However, it is crucial to note that this path is easily broken. If you tell her, "I think you'd be better off cured," early in the conversation, she snaps at you. "I am who I am. I don't need you to fix me." This is a brilliant piece of writing. It shows that she doesn't want to be a project. She doesn't want to be fixed by a hero. She wants to make the choice herself. The Dragonborn's role is not to be the doctor, but to be the sounding board. You have to ask the question, not give the answer. If you fail this check, she will never bring it up again. The door closes. She accepts her fate as a vampire. This permanency makes the cured Serana a rare save state. It rewards players who invested in the emotional roleplay rather than just the combat stats. There is also an interesting interaction if you return to the Soul Cairn or Valerica after curing Serana. Valerica is shocked. She can't believe it. Her daughter, a Daughter of Coldharbour, managed to reverse the irreversible. It proves Valerica wrong one last time. Valerica believed there was no escape from the prophecy or the nature of their blood. Serana proved that biology, even magical Daedric biology, is not destiny. The choice to cure is the ultimate secret of Serana because it is the only one that happens entirely off-screen. We don't see the ritual. We don't see her talk to Falion. We just see the result. It is a private victory. After all the public battles, the prophecies and the wars, she takes this one step for herself, in the quiet of a swamp in Morthal. As she rejoins the Dragonborn, looking mortal and fragile and undeniably happy, the arc feels complete. She has rejected the court, killed the king, and now burned the crown. She is just Serana now, an adventurer, a mage, a friend. And in the grand, violent tapestry of Skyrim, being just a person is perhaps the most radical thing she could possibly be. She readies her weapon, a sword or a spell, and looks at you with those new, human eyes. "Ready when you are," she says, and for the first time she really means it. She isn't waiting for the next tragedy, she's just waiting for the next adventure. We have killed the vampire lord, defied the sun god, traversed the soul cairn, and perhaps even cured the uncurable. We have spent dozens of hours with Serana, listening to her complain about the weather, watching her resurrect chickens, and relying on her ice spikes to cover our retreat. The bond between the Dragonborn and the Daughter of Coldharbour is arguably the strongest relationship in the entire game. It is forged in blood, trauma, and shared destiny. So, naturally, there is one final question that burns in the mind of every player who has ever equipped an Amulet of Mara. Can I marry her? The answer, as every heartbroken lore hunter knows, is a soft but firm no. This brings us to the final, and perhaps most significant, core in-game fact of Serana's character arc. Unlike Isolde, who will marry you if you bring her a mammoth tusk, or the local blacksmith who will pledge eternal love in exchange for some fire salts, Serana is romanceable only in the abstract. If the Dragonborn equips the Amulet of Mara, the universal symbol of "I'm single and looking" in Skyrim, and speaks to Serana, the dialogue option simply does not appear. Or, if you use console commands or mods to force the topic, her voice lines, which exist in the files but are disabled, offer a gentle but devastating rejection. "Look, I'm fond of you," she says, her voice laced with a genuine sadness. "But I don't think I can, with everything I've been through, I don't think I can let anyone get that close." This rejection is not a mechanic oversight, it is a narrative fortress. It is the final secret of Serana, and it transforms her from a video game waifu into a fully realized character with boundaries. To understand why she refuses, we have to look back at the beginning of our story. We have to remember the title Daughter of Coldharbour. The ritual that granted Serana her power was not a gift, it was a violation. It was a ceremony dedicated to Molag Bal, the Prince of Domination. In the lore, this ritual is an inversion of marriage. She was given to the prince. Her body and soul were claimed by an entity that understands only submission and cruelty. For thousands of years, her understanding of intimacy has been linked to that trauma. The idea of a wedding, standing in a temple, making vows belonging to someone, likely triggers a deep visceral panic in her. It mirrors the transactional nature of her relationship with her father, who viewed her as property. By refusing to marry the Dragonborn, Serana is exercising the ultimate agency. She's saying that her body and her life are finally her own, and she isn't ready to sign them away again, even to a hero she trusts. She loves the Dragonborn. Her actions prove that 1,000 times over, but she cannot be a wife. She cannot fit into the domestic box that Skyrim's marriage system requires. This leads to a fascinating obscure lore tidbit regarding the Temple of Mara itself. Mara is the goddess of love, compassion, and the bounty of nature. She is the mother goddess. For a being like Serana, who is technically an undead creature of Oblivion, even if cured, her history remains, stepping into a Temple of Mara is metaphysically dissonant. The blessing of Mara is about fertility and life cycles, things Serana has been cut off from for eras. While a cured Serana might technically be eligible in the eyes of the gods, in her own eyes, she likely feels unworthy or simply incompatible with that kind of divine light. She has seen the Soul Cairn, she has seen the dark heart of Molag Bal. It's hard to play house after that. The community reaction to this unreachable bride status has been nothing short of historic. It fueled the creation of one of the most popular mods in Skyrim history, the Serana Dialogue add-on. This brings us to a massive fan theory and meta-commentary, the fixing of Serana. Thousands of players refused to accept Bethesda's canon ending. They coded their own romance. They hired voice actresses to mimic Laura Bailey. They wrote thousands of lines of new dialogue to force a happily ever after. But does this fix actually break the character? Purist lore fans argue that Serana's refusal is what makes her beautiful. It preserves the tragedy. It makes the relationship platonic but profound. In a game where the player is worshipped by everyone, where you become the Archmage, the Listener, the Harbinger, and the Guildmaster, Serana is the one person who says, "You're my best friend, but you cannot own me." She's the only prize the Dragonborn cannot mount on the wall of their Hearthfire home. This unavailability cements her legacy. She isn't defined by her relationship to the protagonist in the end, she is defined by her wandering. After the quest, Serana often talks about wanting to travel. She wants to see the world she missed. She mentions visiting cities, seeing the mountains, just existing. If you dismiss her, she doesn't go back to the castle to wait for you. She often says she will stay here for a while or go explore. She becomes a nomad. This wandering nature fits her perfectly. She's a woman out of time. The Skyrim she knew is gone. The snow elves are monsters. The dwarves are dust. The empire is crumbling. She's a ghost drifting through a future she doesn't recognise, anchored only by the Dragonborn. The tragedy is that the Dragonborn is also a wanderer, a hero destined to disappear into history, or Hermaeus Mora's realm. They are two lonely souls who found each other in the dark, held hands for a while to keep the monsters at bay, and then must eventually walk their own paths. There is a quiet beauty in the friendship ending that transcends the romance. Think about the final conversations. She trusts you. She opens up to you about her parents. She fights for you. That bond is stronger than the scripted marriage dialogue of "Hello, my love, back from some adventure, I bet." It is a partnership of equals. In a genre often criticised for shallow romances, Serana offers a deep, complex friendship that feels incredibly real because it respects her damage. Her legacy also extends to the gameplay mechanics we discussed. She set the standard. Every follower mod created since 2012 has tried to be Serana. They try to have a backstory, a unique AI, a complex morality. She was the prototype for the super follower. She proved that players want companions who have baggage, who complain, who have opinions, and who sometimes say no. As we look back on the 15 secrets, we see a character arc that is fundamentally about breaking cycles. She broke the cycle of the prophecy by helping destroy its creator, Vyrthur. She broke the cycle of her family's abuse by helping destroy her father, Harkon. She broke the cycle of her mother's victimhood by refusing to hide in the soul cairn. And finally, she breaks the cycle of the video game reward by refusing to be the Dragonborn's trophy wife. She stands alone. Whether she's a vampire lord in royal armour or a cured human in simple robes, she stands on her own 2 feet. The final image of Serana shouldn't be of her fighting a boss or brooding in a castle. It should be of her standing on a roadside in the Reach, looking out over the valley. The wind is blowing her hair. The sun she saved, is setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet that remind her of the magic she used to fear. She adjusts her pack. She checks her dagger. She looks at the Dragonborn one last time with those eyes that have seen eras rise and fall. "I'll see you around," she says, and she means it. The adventure never really ends for people like her. It just changes. She's the girl who woke up in a crypt with an Elder Scroll on her back, and she became the woman who saved the world. And she did it all while complaining about the brightness of the sun. So the next time you see her sandboxing in your home, sitting by the fire or sharpening a sword, don't wish for the dialogue option that isn't there. Appreciate the silence. Appreciate the fact that she is there at all, by choice, not by obligation. That is the greatest secret of all. She stays because she wants to. And in the cold, harsh world of Skyrim, that voluntary presence is the warmest magic there is. The fire in the hearth has burned down to glowing embers now, casting long, soft shadows across the room. The tales of ancient vampires, snow elf betrayals, and soul-stealing crystals are fading into the quiet hum of the night. The intense purple storms of the soul cairn have dissipated, replaced by the gentle, rhythmic sound of your own breathing and the imaginary wind howling outside your window, safe, distant, and cold. We've walked a long road tonight, from the damp depths of Dimhollow Crypt to the blinding light of the ancestral glade. We've seen families broken and worlds saved, but all those battles are finished, the swords are sheathed, the spells are dampened. Serana has found her peace, and it is time for you to find yours. Let the weight of the armour drop from your shoulders, unclench your jaw. Let the tension of the adventure melt away like snow in the spring sun. The castle is quiet. The gargoyles are just stone. The vampires are just stories. You're safe here, in this moment of stillness. Imagine yourself sitting on that balcony in the Forgotten Vale, but the air isn't freezing. It's crisp and refreshing. The sun is dipping below the horizon, not in tyranny, but in rest. The stars are coming out one by one, watching over you. There is nothing left to solve, no puzzles to arrange, no enemies to track, just the vast, comforting silence of a story well told. Close your eyes. Let the darkness be a blanket, not a cage. Drift away from the lore and the logic and float into the velvet embrace of sleep. The dawn will come when it's ready. For now, the night is yours. Sweet dreams.